NA continues on their winning? I don't know, but NA sure continues. Valkyries going up against the Sages coming up next.
That's right, it's NA versus NA, and so naturally, we decided the best person to analyze it was a European to come and score its Alpha Jackal, and we're going to be watching the Valkyries and the Sages. One that I'm actually really excited to watch. It's one of the best case scenarios, as Frog said just then in the coming up streak. NA will both lose and win this set, right? And it is a very, honestly, heavily important set. If you've been watching the bracket, if you've been watching this weekend, this one is an elimination match. Last one was not. Winner of this still has some struggles ahead of them, but finds themselves in a slightly better position, and again is continuing to try and find that grind forward. We've seen both of these teams earlier today. Alpha Jackal, Sages get to come through, and they look pretty good, but definitely maybe leaving a little bit of want left in the air, and I think the Valkyries as well look really good, leave us maybe wanting a little bit more. Again, for those of you who are visual, much like me, then we can show you the bracket so you see a little more of where we're at, which is right now down there, Sages and Valkyries match 7. Winner of this goes against the Wargs. Winner of that match, what is listed as match 9, is going to then get to go up against an SBL team next week. It's just between them and Mambo, whoever wins that in Mambo, to determine which one they play against, whether it's the Hounds or the Gladiators. So this is not the end-all be-all for whoever wins this, but it is a step in the right direction if you win it. Valkyries and Sages, and with both of them specifically wanting to, or at least for me, leaving me wanting a little more, it's the Valkyries that I turn my eyes towards right now, AJ, because looking at it, it's a ton of players that we know, some that people absolutely love and adore, and yet there have been those moments. You know, Sam had a really great game on Thor in the first game. The second game, they have like a 10k gold lead for like 30 minutes, it feels like, but it takes 40 minutes to actually finish that game. And so that's kind of where I'm wondering for you, what is it, some of the strengths of this Valkyrie squad, and maybe some things you want to see from them?
The strengths that I think we saw exhibited today were they're able to get into a nice, comfortable early lead. They're one of the stronger teams at this early game meta that sort of developed over time. The issues that they've had is that they have struggled to close out games. Again, that was very prevalent up against the Solar Scarabs earlier today. As you mentioned, 30-35 minutes of them being in total command, almost slipped through their fingers when they just allowed Versatile or Nemesis to come back into the game. As we can see here, Aquarius bringing out a pick that we haven't seen up until now, bringing out the Achilles.
Yep.
And I think Crimson as well has been a standout player today, specifically on his Janus.
Yeah, that Janus was, Undying had some really solid rotations, really good combinations. We saw some good games, I think, from everybody come through. Gamma went to the Maui, which is something that we haven't been seeing as often, but I feel like what we got was, again, another showcase of maybe why Maui should be showing up, at least somewhere on the list. And just a lot of fun to watch this team and what they were able to provide. But it is, like he said, and as we've kind of hinted at, been a very interesting run. Even here, you're looking at them 5,000 gold up, kills are 12-2. That game didn't end for another 20 minutes after that. And so there's definitely those little moments, those notes that just showcase maybe how the Scarabs are fighting into it, or maybe some struggles that the Valkyries had. Now, I am going to say up front and immediately that if this game is rough for them, I entirely blame Gamma, pre-Pix and Bans, because he's not wearing the flannel to match with Wowy. It's ruining with the team synergy. I can't believe he'd do this.
I don't know how he could do this. This is criminal from him at this point. And you know what? I'm putting all my points that I've very recently earned since Dave lost them onto the Athenian Sages for this entirely because of that flannel pick.
Yeah, look, it writes itself. If you're going to make calls like that, Valkyries, I don't know. We're going to have to look and see what they're up against to see whether or not that's going to affect them that much, right? A lot of name power, I think, on the Valkyries, but you could say something similar for the Sages. Not necessarily in that a lot of these players may be hitting the SPL level, but in the fact that in the last few lands we've had, every single one of them has looked incredibly good, and they come in as the first seed for a reason. Now, it was an unfortunate tumble for them yesterday that gets them down in the loser's bracket, but 2-0 earlier. Now on their path to try and continue that, again, stay alive. And this is a team that, if you've been watching the SEC in North America, you should know pretty much every single one of these players. And I don't even know where to start for the highlight. What players are you looking at when you see this team?
When I'm looking at this team, there are two which really have come to mind, especially earlier today, and that was Snaddy and Jangaru. Both of them having monstrous performances to help them overcome the Weavers earlier today in our first game. I mean, Snaddy almost single-handedly carrying several team fights. Again, we're seeing some picks that have come out that haven't been coming out before, so they're digging deeper into their god pools here, with the Izanami especially coming out for Renjaru. But once again, Snaddy on this tier, 2, 3, 4-man ultimates consistently from him. He was unstoppable.
Yeah, it feels like it's just... I mean, I don't want to call it a must ban, because sometimes you see must bans and then suddenly they just go to something else and they trash you just as hard. But it is something that I think is going to be very difficult for them to deal with and something that you're going to have to address. Sages looked really good up against the Weavers earlier today. Now, unfortunately, I guess for any NA fans out there, no matter how this ends, there's only one North American team that's going to be still left in the bracket, still with a lot to prove. And that's pretty much what this is. May the best NA team win and see what you can do against Europe here, who has been dominating the bracket so far. You had looked at solo lane, and I think very appropriately. I also think we have to give Nayhoo a little bit of a shout out. I'm even going to mention Privative here, because I feel like the two of them have had those moments where it's just a ton of damage, a ton of setup for the team, and it makes everybody else look really good, even though, especially when you're support, I'm always going to be a fanboy of the support players. It is just fun to watch them play, fun to see what they're able to set up and what they're able to get done. This one's going to be... I mean, look, just tough, right? If we got any indication from the Valkyries earlier that they're starting to snap into place, I think they showed it. So it's all up to us right here, right now, or all up to them, I guess, up here, right now, in picks and bans for game number 1, Valkyries and Sages. And the Valkyries will be the first pick team. Are there any bans that have stood out to you this weekend that like, in this set, you immediately are like, that's gotta go?
So far, it has been that tier. I think has to be one of the ones that you can't give to either Aquarius or Snaddy, and lo and behold, Sages have agreed with me. Are they tapped into our comms right now?
Yeah, they're obviously listening in. Banned for collusion. I saw the paycheck that they slipped you.
Oh. No, we're not meant to talk about that.
Or you slipped them, one of the two, I can't remember.
We're not meant to talk about that, you know? It's just hi-rez to them, I mean, nobody else.
It's been, I don't know, spot on the money. Tier, banned out. The Baba Yaga has also been a very popular ban. 100% pick ban rate, 6 games banned, 8 games played. Not something that people want to let through. This is going to be the 15th one. Serket joins that list. And now, Serket's the one that's maybe a little more interesting because it feels like she got hit with a nerf, and as we saw immediately after that nerf, it didn't change anything in her priority. A lot of people, in fact, made her look pretty much the exact same despite the nerf that she hit. And so now skyrocketing back into the bans, do you like kind of taking that one away, specifically from the Sages?
I think if you don't have anything else you really are prioritizing in terms of a ban, and the Horus speaks to that as well, it's not a pick we have been seeing too much of this weekend so far. I think it's absolutely fine to take it away. If you have something else that you want to prioritize, obviously you do that over the Serket, but it's a good all-round ban to go, hey, it's annoying, it can do work, it might not do, but just for safety's sake, we're going to take it away from you.
Well, Hachiman is the only other god. Baba Yaga, Terra, and Hachi were the ones I was talking to Mifflin about earlier, because those were the ones very often picked or banned. And by very often, I mean 100% pick banned so far. The Valkyries went to it, I believe, first pick in their set earlier, and no surprise, they're going to go for it again here. It's a Thor ban from the Sages, though, and that goes back to what we did see earlier, where Sam just had an absolutely insane game. So
monstrous.
Thoughts on, I guess, Thor getting taken out of there and Hachi getting picked up?
I mean, Hachiman probably the top pick ADC right now, head and shoulders above everybody else, I would say. I mean, the only one that really comes sort of close, you have your Kernanos has been sort of up there. I mean, we have seen a little bit of on her every so often, but again, Hachiman just seems to be the staple pick
like
that
the
we can
guy.
see. Yeah, he is the ADC. Ram, sort of second fiddle. And Horus has either been a high priority pick or it's been forgotten about in these drafts. It's either you pick him first or you never pick him again.
And he's been banned a few times as well, which is really interesting because it is very much like you said, like he's either in the bans and everyone's like, okay, this dude is a priority. He's going to be a he's up high in the priority for the picks because of the same reasons, or we've missed him completely. Yamoja, I think, actually still on that list as well as someone who like sometimes is just slipping through and it's like, wait a minute, that's like a really good support. They get the Ram, you had said, playing second fiddle to Hachi. And that's going to be good for the Sages. We've seen, though, some really good snipes on that god, some good play from that god. But I think if I'm the Sages, I'm a little worried right now. Because they got Hachi, they got Maui, they got Janus, all of which they won with a lot earlier.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of snipes, you almost called it into existence with the Janus. We saw one earlier where he just completely got rid of Echrome earlier on with that Janus in base. But the answer to that is the Darji saying, well, if you go through the portal, I'm pulling you right back to where you came from. It's a risky jungle pick that we saw very late on in the day from the Sages yesterday. Had a good start up against Johnny, but unfortunately fell flat later on into the game. So surprised to see it come back this early on for the Sages.
Now, man, I kind of want to ask, like, because they're already targeting with the Kali. They're shooting at Sam, and I would assume that next one's going to be Sam. There's been, like, a really weird mishmash of junglers, I think, that have been picked up throughout the weekend. Like, the only one that stands maybe up at the front right now is Thor, and even that's not like that's so far ahead of everybody else. So with that taken away, Kali taken away, Fenrir taken away, I'm looking at matchups against Daji, and I know like Bakasura's been pretty high on that a list of junglers in general, but Robin's been in that mix so far, mainly for the EU squads. But like, do you think he has enough hold in this meta that he can still work against a Daji just as a counter pick?
I think he works fantastically against Daji as a counter pick. The second Daji goes in with most of her burst, if you time that overhead kick correctly, you negate so much DPS potential from the Daji that you instantly win that 1v1, and she's forced to teleport away, forced to go up into the parallel in a defensive position. It's a very strong counter matchup if you know how to play it. One of the players which I will bet my house on knows how to play it would be Sam Fasoka.
Yes. I would hope so, right? At this point, look, if you got World's MVP and there's anything in the Assassin tab that you're struggling with, something crazy has happened. Sages, though, as mentioned, banned out the Kali and the Fenrir. Maybe leaving that up for a play for the Valkyries to make. We'll have to see where Sam's feeling. Earlier, it was almost impossible to predict because he went for the Wheelish anyway, so who cared? Agni and Discordia banned out on the other side. Are there Janus is a weird one to try and determine matchups for. So how do you feel about a Morgan Le Fay? That's way easier than what I was going to ask, which was who do you not want to play against? But how do you feel about Morgan Le Fay, I guess, just right now?
Ooh, it's difficult because it's one of the first times we have seen Morgan Le Fay at all this season.
Yeah.
She's sort of been taken a little bit on the back burner since she received some nerfs after her release. But with the builds that you got going on these days, with Soul Reaver, with Ethereal Staff, just pure proc items, you almost get the same when you take away some of the stims from your ultimate, some of those marks when you do cast it. So I think it's a good idea for long-range proc builds, for being able to allow Morgan Le Fay to poke people out from a distance.
Your time has
We spoke him into existence. At least that's what I'm going to give us credit for. Raven, locked in. We'll get to see exactly how good Sam is on it. And then the Achilles coming back. You had mentioned it, something that we hadn't seen too often. And yet, for some reason, the last couple of sets, it's really sparked up here, right? The Valkyries playing it earlier. I believe we just saw it in the jungle. Not where it's going to be this time around, but something that Aquarius looked really good with earlier. And so before that last pick, since it's still grayed out, how do you feel about the Achilles into the 4 that the Sages have?
I think it's a 50-50 pick. I think now that the Wukong has been locked in, it gets a little bit better because you have the opportunity to execute the Wukong before he gets onto his Somersault Cloud, or force him to use it earlier than he would like to. But against the Morgan Le Fay, against the Darji, against the Rama, against the Horus, all of whom have dashes, or in Morgan Le Fay's case, a fear, it's going to be difficult for the Achilles to go in and lock down people to then get that execute off. He has to use that CC immunity earlier, or he'll have to use his juke shoes as much as he needs to.
Well, the good news is there's some people around him that have some lockdown, right? Maybe not as much as you'd like, but like at least Raven has a root, Maui's got a hook, so maybe some balance into it there. Talk to me about Wukong, because he's just one of those gods I'm almost always, like, unless it's a Bluestone meta, I'm always perpetually surprised to see him.
Well, you say it's not a Bluestone meta, and all we've been seeing so far with the Solar Laters this week is Bluestone Pendant, and then going into some form of damage item if you're something like a Thor. They've gone into what Wukong loves, which is that Soul Later. Gives himself some sustain in lane, gives himself some power, some good early kill potential, some penetration. It's an all-catch-all item that Wukong loves to build. He just builds defense from that point on, and there's not too much you can do about him. I mean, his passive is also probably one of the strongest passives in the game. And the fact that you get power, you get protections when you are below a certain health. and then when you go above that health, you still keep it for a little bit of time.
Yeah. Something that it can work out really well. Like, there have been times I've gone into a set and been a naysayer about a Sun Wukong and then watched him literally go like 6-0 in night and just have a hell of a game. And it feels like carry-wise, the potential is there for both squads, right? I mean, if you're looking at them in a vacuum, I'm leaning towards Ram and the Daji, maybe a little more than what I see on the Valkyries.
Yeah, I agree.
But after seeing what the Valkyries did with this style draft, and knowing that the Janus was going 8-0 and 9, that maybe gives it a little bit more credit. So I think looking at specifically how these ran earlier today for some of these drafts or in a vacuum, in a 5-on-5 team fight, how do you see things unfolding for these teams? Who's got the edge?
If we're going to play both comps to their sort of fullest potential, I would say the Valkyries should have a slight advantage, given that those portals, as you mentioned, should be able to keep people in and out of the fight very easily, should be able to provide a lot more safety. But if the Sages are able to catch this Janus out, which you're talking about catching ErupTCrimson out, it's not really too possible. He plays ridiculously well when it comes to positioning, but if you do manage to catch him out early with that Daji, her burst should be able to take Janus out of the game.
Well, we'll see. Can he have a repeat performance? What will the Valkyries say? What will the Sages answer with? We'll find out with Dimes and J-Mac.
Dimes and J-Mac joining me here as my analyst. Good to see you, pal. We got North America rounding out the day. Day 2 here of SMITE Masters. It's Valhalla Valkyries and the Athenian Sages. And J-Mac, taking a look at these two compositions, first thing that really jumps out at me is that Janus pickup for ErupTCrimson after earlier just today having what Mifflin called a legacy game on this pick.
Yeah, Janus is one of those picks that is kind of volatile whenever it comes down to your mid laners, because you have two distinct styles of Janus play. You go for your big burst, shotgun style of damage. You want to be the one hitting the hardest over anybody else. Or you have that more kind of utility style play, things that really, like when Hurrywin was playing in the mid lane, that was kind of his coin, is I'm going to sit back, I'm going to provide portals for the team, get my team in, get my team out, throw out some damage when I get the opportunity, build that full cooldown. And because the pen has been given now to Janus in his ultimate, having at max rank, 20% pen in the kit, can actually change up his build more than almost any other mages in the game now, where most of them are going, we're going double flat pen, we're going to build a couple of different percent pen items in here to try and guess that 40% cap. Janus can build 1% pen item, say, cool, I'm at 30 or 40%, so I'm already hitting harder. Can really diversify his build, and I think that's what maybe makes him so strong now compared to some of the other mages.
And looking at the rest of that Valhalla Valkyries composition, it's almost a run back from what we saw earlier today. You got the Maui Hachiman in the duo lane. That was very successful for both Gamma and Wowy. Couple of change-ups, though. The Achilles has come out and looked pretty good in the jungle, now headed over to solo.
Yeah, while I do like Achilles in the jungle, he has a lot of damage to his kit, a lot of stims that come active whenever you have that second ability, or depending on which version of his passive, if you have the shirtless for more damage and a little bit more mobility, or if you have the armor on to be able to give him a little bit more defense in there, really gives him a lot of utility in his playstyle, a lot of diversity with how he can go. I do like having the tankier style of play because it really allows you to threaten the backline more, as you can build more defense and then switch into the armor off stance, so you just get a little bit more power into your build. Upon that second ability, sustain more than just about any other warrior in the game at this point by yourself, and is one of those few warriors that can really get to the backline and be that consistent threat. And now with the buff to his execute going up to 35% HP,
Killer.
flat all the way around, makes it so much more devastating and so much easier to find those picks late game.
Now, on the flip side, Athenian Sages, I saw that Morgan Le Fay lock-in. Privative demonized ranked with his Morgan Le Fay support for weeks and weeks and weeks. Kind of was hoping to see it go the way of Privative, but no, the Morgan Le Fay heads into the middle lane on Nayhoo. Nayhoo's had a couple performances, really would like to step it up here for the Athenian Sages in this knockout round versus the Valhalla Valkyries. Talk me through this Morgan pickup.
Now, I really did like the Morgan Le Fay in the top 3 where it was kind of picked out there. The back 2 make it a little bit better for the opposite side here, because Robin's a great god that can really stick to a lot of these mages because of his natural immunity in the kit, whether it be his ultimate or that overhead kick. But Morgan Le Fay is going to provide a lot of self-peel more than any other mage in the game. You jump into Morgan Le Fay's face, and unless you pre-beads or predict with overhead kick ahead of time on this Robin, you're going to get hit by Dragonflight, you're going to get thrown up in the air, push back, hit with a whole heap of damage because you already know the Fear Sigil's coming immediately after if it's not on cooldown at that point. It allows her a lot of safety and a decent bit of sustain with her ultimate as well. Makes her a lot safer than some of the other gods with no inherent mobility into their kit. Being still an immobile mage allows her a lot of safety. It's going to allow her to self-peel herself. Going to allow Renjaru a little bit of extra safety as well in that backline. I think that's the most important part for this Sage's composition and for these carries is to be able to peel for themselves. Renjaru can go up in the sky by 4 or 5 seconds, allow his team to get through.
Sure.
Nayhoo can push some of these frontliners away from him, create a little bit of space, and allow him to really get the rest of his kit off.
J-Mag, I'm not sure if you saw that poll pop up or not, but 87% going the way of the Valhalla Valkyries. Days 1 and 2, you've been seeing hovering kind of like 70, 30, 65, been a little bit closer, but chat really going the way of the Valkyries, and you got to think maybe a bit of recency bias, right? We just saw the Valkyries play a little bit earlier, say just kicking off the day here. But in that same vein, do you think the Valhalla Valkyries being the most recent to play, do you think they're warmed up or a little bit more burned out?
I think that we're finally seeing the Valkyries that we probably expected throughout this phase. Their performance over the course of the SCC has left a little bit to be desired. Sam for Soccer playing these kind of oddball jungle picks, the Scyllas, the Agnis, Anubises, stuff like that. Even when he has gone towards more of his style of play, the Thanatoses, the Poseidons, it still was a little bit lackluster. So seeing the Valkyries back in that full swing, that expectation of the team that we had just saw in the SPL the year before, I think it's given fans maybe a little bit more hope.
Privative taking some shots here, already popping that active. That's going to be down for a couple minutes here in this early game, and the Athenian Sages getting forced out here on the duo side. Now, when you're looking at two junglers, one that we've seen, Ravana, and one that's pretty much only a Jangaru pickup, as Jangaru's making their way over here to the right-hand lane. Is there one of these that really sticks out to you that likes to get active early? As Sam answers the question, Nayhoo goes through a portal, Unstable Vortex just offline there in the middle lane, almost picking up First Blood, but meanwhile, over in this right-hand side, Jangaru, tick damage on Aquarius, not quite enough, able to escape to the safety of the Tier 1 tower.
Early game, I like Ravana just a little bit more pre-5. Pre-level 5, I actually favor Ravana over the Dodgy. You got quick CC, you got quick burst damage to combo in, you have immunity in your kit already. Once that level 5 hits, I put a little bit more favoritism towards Dodgy in these side lane ganks. In the 1v1, I'm still going to hand it to Ravana because he has 2 forms of immunity, gets him out of pal out, doesn't have to worry about anything from Jangaru.
Sure.
But when it comes to trying to kill these carries, get these side laners in danger, I really like what Jangaru can do, especially because he's got some extra CC around him to burn those beads and really be able to make use of the pal out, or use them to get the beads and then have either Privative or Nayhoo or Snaddy get some of that big CC off in the fights.
Already here in game number 1 of this North American matchup, both junglers looking to get stuff going. In the middle lane, Sam for Soccer trying to take out Nayhoo. In reverse, Jangaru focusing their attentions on Aquarius. And it looks like this Dodgy's headed towards a more transcendent, stacky style build, and Sam for Soccer's going straight for penetration and power off the rip.
Yeah, get a little bit of that stacking power. I mean, it's going to be a bit of a slower game for Jangaru, but could be working towards some extra defense a little bit later, or maybe not defense, but a little bit of extra cooldown later on, some extra quick burst damage. Gamma sitting around this purple buff waiting for Wowy, but unfortunately they're not going to be able to go for that successful purple. Some of the benefits of the Maui, able to get himself over that wall. And this is what they were talking about on the desk in the solo lane. Snaddy's already used the ultimate.
Oh, Aquarius off the mark there with the execute. Could have been a free First Blood, and Snaddy turning it right back around. Tiger form locks down Aquarius, and one more shot. What a turnaround there. An easy First Blood dropped by Aquarius, and Snaddy picks it up instead.
Can't be missing the execute. That's the most important part of the Achilles in this game, is getting the execute. You don't have to deal 500, 600 damage in the early stage. You just got to get them down to that 35% threshold. And you're almost, I say almost because we've seen it a few times so far today, you're not guaranteed the execute there, but you get that kill if you can land it. You don't even need the reset by that point, but the fact that Snaddy already had used his CC immunity, got up in the sky, got his heal beforehand, means you essentially had a free target and you just let it go.
That was tough to watch there. Aquarius dropping down for First Blood. Doesn't even need a jungler to make an appearance over there in the solo lane as 4 minutes ticks over here. 1 kill up on the board for the Athenian Sages. And, you know, looking at it's 2-0s all day long. In fact, it's 2-0s across the board here at SMITE Masters. And looking at this North American matchup, the Valhalla Valkyries and the Athenian Sages, 2 very close, stacked rosters and very close in skill. Wouldn't be surprised if this one ran to 3.
Sam for Soccer, though, and Jangaru both trying to get active in solo. Jangaru came by yesterday, but now it's a fight.
It's a blink in from both junglers up into that pal-out. Aquarius drops first, turned immediately around Snaddy, taking down the Achilles. It's a 1-for-1. Both solo laners dropping down. And the Valhalla Valkyries get on the board with their first kill.
And a First Blood benefit Definitely going at least over to the Valhalla Valkyries in that regard, or at least in that fight. Our first blood did go over in the solo lane previous, but getting that extra bit of a shutdown because Snaddy was able to get those 2 kills there, finding that shutdown so important for the Valkyries to kind of keep Snaddy at bay. He's already getting that Solier online, which means he's not going for defense. This is a good target for Sam to start fighting early because he's not opted for a defensive option just yet. Probably imagine so, looking towards maybe Manticore spikes already in that second slot, which will give him a little bit of tankiness, will allow him to get some of that extra benefit from the CC, gets that extra HP damage on his next ability afterwards. So starting that way, but now is the optimal time if you want to keep farming over on the solo.
Privative looking to invade this purple buff on the left-hand side here. Gamma and Wowy pulling it back under tower. Privative just playing a little bit of a menace here, trying to keep Wowy and Gamma's attention. And for the next, about minute or so, Jangaru and Sam, no Blink online, no Ultimates online, so wouldn't be surprised to see mid laners and ADCs playing up a little bit more aggressively, knowing that their junglers and the enemy junglers aren't going to be able to make that impact that they normally would.
And this is the benefit that the Valkyries have as a mid laner with Janus, is you can play a little bit more aggressively because Crimson can then rally himself and whoever's near him to one side of the map or the other. Whether the snipe actually hits or not doesn't necessarily matter. It's all about getting those portals for your team, being able to transport them either out of a fight or into a fight to try and get a gank going through. It's one of the big benefits that Janus has always had, is his high mobility, be able to literally just walk through any given wall that you want there, whether it be from your just first ability or your ultimate there. So I don't imagine for Crimson he wants to get super active early. Janus doesn't hit very hard in the early stages of the game. It's really, once you start hitting that level 16, 17, you got 3 or so items in, that's when the real, what we like to call the shotgun style damage starts to ring through.
Items coming online here, builds pretty much parity across the board. I mean, a little bit of differentiation in the solo and the jungle, but both of the ADCs heading down that Devo's Gloves route, got the gauntlets online for the supports. Magic Focus picked up here for Crimson, finishing off that Chronos Pendant. So pretty much even across the board here in terms of items. Nothing too crazy being bought 7 minutes in here.
Privative dashed in, quick pull back, and this could set up easily for Sam. If Privative can get to the sky in time, but he can't. And so Sam is able to turn a bad situation for the Athenian Sages into a worse one, ties up the score for the Valkyries. And this is what you need out of these junglers. These are both junglers that are so much better in the early game. Ravana does an immense amount of damage. Making sure that you can get the best benefit from that now is the way to go through. Same with Jangaru on the Daji. If you're not able to get beads burned, she becomes so much less valuable through the late game. So I want to see the jungle stay active as this game continues going on.
Now, I've had these conversations with players in Alpha Jackal about this Daji pickup, kind of one of my question marks coming into SMITE Masters, and I've heard a lot of naysayers, a lot of people saying, Daji, sure, you've got the Powwow for beads burning, you've got great damage, but there's other junglers that just do it better. Where do you stand on this particular pickup?
I think for Daji, it's never really been the individual character itself. It hasn't been that Daji's really good or Daji's really bad. It's a lot of composition around Daji that makes her either shine or look like complete dust more than anything else. So I like this composition around the Daji because it gives Jangaru an opportunity to utilize that Powwow to take beads away, can set up for Privative to find the stuns, or vice versa. Priv goes in, hits a fracture, that's almost guaranteed in the middle of a team fight, an easy beads burned by there. That Jangaru can then punish. He's got great burst damage as well. Once you see Hydra's Lament come online, and that's, I think, where we see Jangaru's power spike really increase, is when Hydra's is online. You walk in, hit an auto, pop your burn, hit him with another auto, and all of a sudden you're chunking at least 30% of a carry's HP or more at that point through. So I think that's where we'll see Jangaru's best active chance to get through. But just going back into the initial point there, I think that for Daji, it's always been composition driven for her.
Good amount of action here as we hit 9 minutes and push towards 10 in this game number 1 between the Valks and the Sages. A little faster paced than some of the other games we've seen today, and already a lot of action over here in the solo lane as Jangaru's making the rotation over Aquarius, having to execute backwards. That's not the way you want to head. Snaddy grabbing another kill for the Sun Wukong. 3-1-0 so far for the Wukong, and that's going to make a huge impact rotating over to those beacons or even a middle lane for a game.
But double ultimate, not going to get through there. 2 CC immunities from the Sages will keep that ult away from Gamma. And because we've been seeing support stick around this lane so long, it's kind of almost forced the junglers to get a bit more active elsewhere on the map or try and focus the duel like we're seeing here.
Aggressive in by Wowy, grabs a double stun. Gamma follows it up with some CC. Sam for Soccer is here, joins the party. Mystic Rush off the mark, doesn't matter. Wowy puts the finishing touches on Renjaru. through space and time there just to make sure that the team can pick it up. And the Valhalla Valkyries turn the kill around. So the Athenian Sages grab one over in solo. Valhalla Valkyries say thank you very much in duo, and it's once again 3-3 dead even here at 10 minutes.
So one of the best resource burners in the game that the Valkyries have is that landfall ultimate from Gamma. Throw it out there. You don't have to commit yourself to it. You can stand at a range, force an ultimate, force a beads, and then set up for an objective like this.
Very early Gold Fury. It's 4 members of the Valkyries versus Privative and Nayhoo. But the support in the mid are enough to show face. Get the Valhalla Valkyries off that objective, so it's going to be a reset, grab some neutral farm. Valhalla Valkyries a little bit behind in gold here, but at just 10 minutes, gold isn't a great indicator of success.
Staying active early is probably one of the best things the Valkyries can do right now for themselves, because late game, the Sages composition, it's going to be very tanky, it's going to be very slippery to try and get in and out of these fights to deal. And so getting a few extra kills right now for the Valkyries, set up for these beacons, get ready for that first Rule Titan fight, could be one of their better opportunities, because come late game, you still got great defense. Aqua is going to be really hard to deal with for some of these backliners, I should say. Gamma's not going to have to commit himself to trying to get any of these kills or burn any resources, and you always have to keep eyes on Crimson, which is really hard to do as a Janus, because you essentially act as a second jungler, as that lone assassin style of play from that mage. So it's going to be difficult for the Sages late game to deal with some of the front line of the Valkyries if they can keep up their same pace. But with how hard the Hunters have been hitting, you've got to have somebody ahead enough, such as Aquarius, to be able to be a threat to that backline.
Speaking of Aquarius, 3 kills on the board for the Sages.
They're all on him.
3 deaths on the slash line for Aquarius. I mean, only 2 levels down. How impactful is it that Aquarius has been the recipient of all these deaths, or is it something where Aquarius can recover from this and make just as much of an impact as Snaddy come mid-game?
I mean, Sages recognize he's the biggest threat come late game. That 35% execute is going to be easy to pull off in a team fight unless you can get a body block through if you're on the side of the Athenian Sages. So making sure to deal with probably the easiest person on this map to gank right now, because Wowy jumps on the horse, there's no catching him. Gamma can swing away over a wall. Only Jangaru is really going to be able to catch him at that point unless you commit an ultimate from Priv. So I like the focus towards the easiest target now, but if you're going to keep it up, you got to keep that pace going now.
Privative sent through a portal, no follow-up damage though. Sam a little bit off the mark with his initiation. Chaos side grabs that Stygian beacon for themselves, so the Sages pop that in their pocket at 12 minutes here. A little bit of movement speed, a little bit of gold. Good stuff for the Athenian Sages as they look to break open this scant gold lead they've accumulated.
Gamma, recipient of some damage in CC, but Priv also going to eat some back there. And Crimson starting to get his damage online now, and well, you can see just why this Hachiman is sitting at a 75% win rate and has been one of the top pick, top ban hunters really ever since his buff came through. And you got to remember, this is a partial revert nerf back to his first ability that Eagle Eye initially got the 120% scaling, got the additional bonus power with it. Dialed back just a little because he was hitting maybe a tad bit too hard in some of these fights out there, but still hitting very hard, and especially up against Ram, who just can't outrange him in those initial boxing matches if the Eagle Eye is up. Well, he's a phenomenal player to just be able to sit back here, just kind of farm safely, get that easy poke, and force his opposition back to base as early as he can.
Well, Executioner's Axes online for both Hunters, which means much more potential for a Gold Fury shred, especially both of these 2 mages in particular. Gamma and Privative are going back and forth. Sam for Soccer, looking to make something happen in duo. Both of these mages, both Janus and Morgan Le Fay, wonderful secure, wonderful steal ability. So if either of these squads really want to attempt a neutral objective, they're going to have to make sure either Nayhoo or ErupTCrimson are completely out of the fight. There's always steal potential. Jangaru up into the Palau to avoid the unstable vortexes. Gamma knocked up. Gamma pulled in, but the damage not there. A 3-man Mystic Rush coming out for Sam. Landfall doesn't grab anybody. Privative in the air. Privative back down. And 3 ultimates burned on each side, but nothing comes of it.
Gamma a bit slow on that landfall. I would have imagined he'd used it to immune the Palau and try and cut off an escape path, but instead tries to use it to reclose the gap back in to try and bring the Sages back after a fight that they were already breaking away from. Problem is that there's so much immunity on the opposite side by that point there. He didn't even get a set of beads from it. All he did was get an ultimate here, an ultimate there. Not the end of the world. The most important relic for the Valkyries to burn in these cases are the beads. It allows Sam and Aqua to be able to really close into the backline. So I would have liked to see it a bit sooner there from Gamma on the landfall, but not upset there because they don't lose out on anything either.
Aquarius is now down 3 levels over in the solo lane. Luckily, the rest of the Valhalla Valkyries either even or a bit of a lead there in the duo lane. Level 11 to level 10, 14 to 13. A little bit behind, though. Sam for Soccer in the jungle has been doing a lot of ganking. couple kills on the board for him, but a little behind an XP as Pyromancer started up by the Athenian Sages. Gamma shows face, pushes the Sages off of the objective. A moment of calm here on the battleground as Pyromancer on the board, Gold Fury up as well. But like I was saying, neither of these squads can really take one for free with those mages on the board.
Now, I will say for Priv, his most valuable resource in hand right now is that Magi's Cloak for himself, because as we've seen, the hook from Gamma is not going to be enough to take that bubble away, because it's not technically a hard CC to be able to bring them back through. So making sure to keep that bubble up means he doesn't have to waste ultimate to try and get away from things. He doesn't have to worry about having some other form of CCMU like a purification beads to get out. He can just rely on that bubble. Only problem is when he has to rely on the bubble, if he gets pulled into something, as we saw there with Crimson, or like we saw earlier with Sam being able to grab it either off of the root or from the portal through there, makes it a little bit harder for Priv. So as long as he's got that bubble, he's safe against the majority of what the Valkyries can do to him.
Snaddy was deep there in the Valhalla Valkyries jungle, but Sun Wukong at this point in the game, I mean, pretty much ungankable, right? You've got form of CC to get out of there, the Somersault Cloud, you've got like 9 million different forms to turn into. Wow, he dashes away there from Renjaru. Jangaru wrapping around the corner here in the Tier 1 tower, dashes in aggressively, but it's just to throw some auto attacks into the tower. Tier 1 is going to drop on the left-hand side. Wowy going in on the horse Jangaru, up into the Palau, yanks in Wowy, late beats though. As here comes the rest of the Valhalla Valkyries. Crimson throwing out the damage. Renjaru dropping low already from those vortexes. Up in the air and back down. Gamma cutting off the escape path. Privative using the Horus ultimate to get out of danger. Sanford Soccer's made the rotation. But it's a full disengage. Gamma's not done though. Goes back in with the landfall. Nayhoo dropping low. No escape. Gamma locking down the remaining members of the Sages. A pull back in. Nayhoo finally drops as Sanford Soccer finds his 3rd kill, maybe opens the door here for an objective.
So great fight for the Valkyries, especially Wowy, recognizing that he's got teammates coming back through. You have a Janus get you across the map. You've got Gamma rotating back over, so you can start this fight through. But also good on the Sage for recognizing that they have reinforcements. Privative is able to dash his way back in, immediately get back to Renjaru, actually gets that healing surge right back to him before he gets up in the sky, and then immediately channels the ultimate as soon as he's ready to land back down. Course and Aegis need to be used from Renjaru to avoid a little bit of extra damage, but it's able to bail each other out, and that's really going to be kind of the name of some of these early fights, these early scraps, is which team can bail the other team out a little bit faster, which one of these supports or which one of these junglers is able to peel for me so that way I can escape a little bit longer and delay this fight just a bit more.
You know, JMac, even though it's only 4-3 as we're getting close to 18 minutes here, it's not like this game's been devoid of action, right? We've been seeing scraps across the map, seeing some good ganks, but even there, you saw it was an engagement, a disengagement, a re-engagement, another re-engagement by Gamma. I mean, this is not a fight that you go into, you burn, you blow everybody up, and you back out. This are long, drawn-out team fights. Is that kind of how these compositions are drawn up, or how do these teams want to play them?
Initially, you would want these to be a little bit faster bursts. You have Jangaru, you have Nayhoo. They can deal an immense amount of damage really quickly, but because of how tanky the teams are, because of how mobile everybody is on the side of the Valkyries, it makes it to where you can draw these fights out just a little bit longer. Because the only real sustain on map is coming from Priv, and it's not a massive heal that comes from this Horus in the midst of a team fight, obviously with the cooldown being nerfed as well from it, from 10 to 13 seconds a little bit earlier on in some of the patches. It's made it sustain not as impactful, and it's made it to where these fights really do come down to just who can outlast more than anything else.
5v5 for the first time here at 18 minutes and 40 seconds. Pyromancer started up by the Valkyries. Athenian Sages going to be short-handed with the jungler and the ADC on the left-hand side. Valhalla Valkyries are committing. The Athenian Sages take down the Pyromancer under the Valkyries' noses. Up in the air goes Snaddy. But it's just to walk away, and not only that, the Athenian Sages are going to grab a tier 2 on the left-hand side as well.
Actually not going to be able to stick around because the threat of this exactly. There's a Janus on the map. You can't be sticking around for more than even just a couple of seconds at that point. Renjaru immediately channeled back. Jangaru walked away from there. So it will just be the Pyromancer, at least stolen away by the Sages, and the fact that everybody gets out, the most important thing there. Because we've seen sometimes where you commit to a steal, you end up losing somebody. But therein lies the benefit of Snaddy on the Wukong. You can dive in, try and steal something, pop your ultimate, and if you've got a wall nearby, nobody's really going to be able to chase you too far out through there. Sages keeping this game interesting and actually taking the lead back for themselves after they just lost it to the Valks.
And it's tough scenes for the Valhalla Valkyries. I mean, they were a 5-man unit over on the right-hand side. You got Crimson there for the secure, but Sages have plenty of steal potential, right? Snaddy over the top with Jingu Bang, Nayhoo, tons of magical damage on the board. It's going to be tough to sneak any objective or coin flip, but you're going to have a dedicated secure.
And here's a bit of the problem as the Sages early game where I wanted Jangaru to be a bit more active, try and fight over into these side lanes a bit more. He did a lot of that on the right side of the map. I mean, he did a lot to Aquarius, but that's the only person who's really been under any threat from this G, and this is where she's going to start falling off, is now you don't really have any optimal targets to try and go for these Powwows anymore. You don't really have that easy gank on any of the lanes. So now it's going to come down to your disruption in the team fights to be able to really be your biggest benefit, whether that be Privative dashing in and stealing a set of beads, whether it's Snaddy going in with a tiger form to try and grab a set of beads. Your value has been lost a little bit in the G, and we haven't really seen the Powwows except for used defensively in the last few team fights.
A little bit of a level lead for Sam for Soccer as well, who's bought himself a pretty decent slash line here at 3-0-3 as we approach 21 minutes in game number 1 here. Best of 3. Someone's going home. Both of these teams in the losers bracket. This is fighting for Smite Masters life. The Valhalla Valkyries already scraped their way through over the number 1 EU seed. Same thing goes for the Athenian Sages. And on both of these teams on their final lifeline here in the last set of the day.
Yeah, the Valkyries definitely do not want to go out here. Remember, this is a team that was projected to be the number 1 in the NASCC, a team that was just on the cusp end of being able to make it to the SPL and now fighting for elimination this early in the tournament up against their number 1 in the NASCC and the Sages. Really a lot on the line for both of these teams for reputation, maybe even just for mental sake, being able to find success here. Privative caught out, but he's got ultimate just in time. He'll be able to get out, but that's a massive ultimate now too. Burning the team fight, a lot of the Sage's safety has now been stripped away.
The Primal Fury is online and being looked at here by the Valkyries. No Somersault Cloud. Horus can't take to the skies as well. Lockdown potential for the Valhalla Valkyries. Primal Fury taking some shots out of the Valks. Snaddy and Renjaru are leading the charge here. Jingu Bang over the top, a little bit of damage onto Gamma. It's going to be just fine, chucking out a fishing hook. Can't find a target though. And in goes the solo laner Aquarius into the backline. Privative's the target. Mystic Rush over at the top. Onto the Sun Wukong, but plenty tanky is the solo laner. Jangaru up into that powwow and immediately back down on the ground. Just cannot find priority targets with that ultimate. But it is enough to drive the Valhalla Valkyries back and back to base.
Tried to go for, I imagine, Sam for Soccer there. It was Jangaru on the powwow, but as soon as that chain was broken away by overhead kick, by that Mystic Rush, no real target for him to pull that in, and that's kind of been the downside of Jangaru in these last couple of fights. Privative standing forward to try and body block for Renjaru, but you might want to have Renjaru take a couple of those shots for you, because it's starting to reel in some damage, and Aquarius is back for another fight.
Oh, we got a chance here. Privative, target of Aquarius, looking to make up for that execute missed earlier in the game. Execute range as Snaddy has to go up in the air once again. Aquarius curious. Why didn't finish off Privative? Maybe ticking over that execute threshold at the last moment there. But driving back, Snaddy and Privative opens the door once again for the Valkyries. Only Renjaru and Nayhoo around the corner to defend this Primal Fury up in the air. Snipes raining down, not on the Primal Fury, but on members of the Valkyries. Primal Fury dropping low. Renjaru has come back down to earth. Gamma tanking it up over the top. Comes the Valhalla Valkyries taking down the Primal Fury. Sam for Soccer, low mana. Ultimate able to escape, and the Valhalla Valkyries grab that objective and don't lose a single member.
And they don't really got to use anything for it either. Wowy did have to expend beads during that fight, so it's down for another 2 minutes, but the Valkyries have just been playing confidently. They're stepping up to the objective. They're forcing the Sages to answer back to the question. They're making the Sages come out of their comfort zone, which has been this safe, kind of passive farm style of play for the last 10 or so minutes of the game, and it's making them become active. And because the Athenian Sages aren't ready to get active, they're not at full build for Nayhoo yet. Jangaru's not fully up in his damage yet. Snaddy still needs a little bit of tankiness to his name because he is getting shredded by the damage of Wowy and even what Crimson has gone for in his build. They're not ready for their team fight stage yet because they didn't abuse how well their early game was, and so now the Valkyries are putting them in such an awkward position for so many of these fights.
At 24 minutes here, J-Mac, for all intents and purposes, this is a dead even game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 1,000, not even 1,000 gold, call it 800 separating these two squads. Level 20 ticking across the board for ADCs, for solos. Valkyries half a level behind. Sages have hit it already. Privative moving forward here, locking down Sam for Soccer, who's able to use that overhead kick to escape some of the CC, but up goes Gamma and right back down forced to use the landfall to immune the Palau Aquarius, and in goes Sam for Soccer with the through space at time ripping through Privative. Wowy charging forward on the horse. Aquarius putting the finishing touches on Privative, and the Valhalla Valkyries are not done. Snaddy trades it back. Nayhoo able to escape with a Morgan Le Fay. Snaddy picks up a second, and what was originally a great engagement from the Valkyries gets flipped on its head.
Yeah, a bit overzealous there from the Valkyries. You got the one pick, you force the Sages back under the tower. No real need for Sam and Aqua to dive that far in, but with Snaddy back through, trying to find another kill, but look how much damage Wowy is just doing. Renjaru forced to sit to the sideline, but now he can go up for some big snipes. Wowy's got to juke out the last couple of shots, but Renjaru just out of range.
And Crimson able to portal away as well. Potential there for many members of the Valkyries and the Sages to fall, but no one does so. So it's going to be once again dead even 5 for 5. A little bit more of a goal lead here for the Sages. XP dead even. But I mean, towers across the map. Tier 1s all online for the Sages. Tier 1s only down in duo and solo. Still alive in mid here for the Valkyries. Only a couple objectives really ripped off the board. A couple Gold Furies, got one Pyromancer. Beacons are split down the middle even. I mean, what is it if you're looking at this map in this state of the game? Is it going to be the Fire Giant that really cracks this thing open?
It really is, unless one of the teams can find a pick before the Titans spawn in, before we start to see the surge up the mid lane. Otherwise, it feels like it's going to be a pretty even stalemate at the actual Titans, unless both teams really want to try and force a fight through. If Jangaru decides to jump in, pal out, try and take a couple of players through, that's the only real opportunity this early on, at least. And I say early, we're 26, 27 minutes into the game at this point. But at this stage, pre-enhanced Fire Giant, that's the best opportunity for a team to get anything going, is to try and get a pick before the Titans clash. But now that window of opportunity is gone, Renjaru's not even going to stick around for this fight. Instead, he was split pushing over on left to try and maybe see if a Valkyrie player would rotate over. Now seeing that none of them have, he's got to rejoin his team back here in mid.
Valhalla Valkyries and the Athenian Sages clashing around their Titans. Gamma leading the charge here. Taking a bit of poke out from the Sages, but plenty tanky is this Maui. Gets the bubble stripped away. Privative gets that one off the board as well. Aquarius looking to set something up here as the Sages Titans taking the brunt of the damage. Look at Jangaru though. Eyes on this Dodgy. One big Palau could really open things up. And nope. Dodgy over the wall decides maybe this is not the fight I want to take. But the tier 1 tower looking pretty juicy here for the Valkyries. In goes Privative through the portals into execute threshold. Healed back up though. Sam for Soccer not willing to commit to that one. And the Titan will die. Tier 1 tower still alive.
So I've been seeing this horse so much. One of the slipperiest warriors to try and deal with in fights like these. It has your standard dash to get in, but then you've always got your get out of dodge card with that healer surge to get back to your team. Even being an execute threshold, no real threat because he's able to outrange what Aquarius can do with the ultimate. However, while that clash happened over in mid, Renjaru and the Sages rotate over for Primal Fury, and right now in this meta with all of the damage kind of nerfed across the board, remember 30% sweeping nerf to all those tier 3 items, it makes the Fire Giant a little bit harder to kill, especially Enhanced Fire Giant. So right now, these Primal Furies are some of the most important ones that you can get as these teams, because getting that increased damage to these jungle bosses, to really anything in the jungle, is going to make it that much easier to kill, because, well, crit's not really meta right now, and that was the easiest way to kill Fire Giants, to kill Gold Furies, was to build up some crit on your Hunter, get a lot of shred from your mages. Now that you don't have that crit as a luxury anymore, have to do a little bit more damage, Primal Fury is a perfect way to do that.
Pyromancer back online here as both of these squads hover around that objective. And 1-4-1, I mean, targeting Aquarius out hasn't really paid dividends here for the Sages, hasn't really translated into the middle game. And meanwhile, Sun Wukong has been the guy today. He's got the juice all day long. All 5 kills of the Athenian Sages onto Snaddy, 5-1-0, making it happen here in game number 1.
And that does worry me a bit for the Sages, because it means they put all of the kills, all of that extra bonus into the Soul Laner's pocket. And while Snaddy has been doing a lot of damage, second on the chart, highest for his team by nearly 7,000 damage over the next closest for his squad, it does mean that he is the biggest threat on map. And if you can take Snaddy out of the fight, if you can find that pick, it's that much easier for the Valkyries to be able to find their way into these fights and be able to get these Pyromans, because right now, Snaddy doesn't want to step up, especially with the damage output that Wowy has, and now that Crimson is online, has that full pen, at least in percent pen, has a ton of cooldown in his build, Crimson is unfazed by what Snaddy can do.
Wowie's been doing it. Of the backliners, 18,000 damage for Wowy on this Hachiman. Looking great so far, 1-0-3. Got that dominance finished up. Odibo got some good attack speed, but same thing goes for Renjaru on the other side. Hasn't seen the same impact thus far, but the capability is there. I mean, there's a reason that Ram is top pick, top ban consistently. Safety, damage, snipes. I mean, you've got the clutch factor. ADCs on both of these squads could pop off and turn a team fight.
That's really where you need it more than anything. We saw in the sets earlier, Spudio was really able to pop off on both of these selections. So it's not like Hachiman or Rama is inherently better than one of the other options. That's why we're consistently seeing them as the number 1 and 2 ADCs to go towards. Sometimes it comes down to player preference of which one you want. Do you want the safety of Hachiman? Do you want the distance snipes of Renjaru, at least on the Rama in this case? So now that we're starting to approach that 30-minute mark, it's now Enhanced Fire Giant. Both teams have that Primal Fury buff, at least one stack over to themselves. All going to come down really to these Fire Giants where we really see kind of the breakout, because being 3,000 up this stage in when your mid laners are both nearly full build, your hunters are pretty much even in their builds at this point through, your junglers are finishing up theirs, and your soul laners are already tanky. Support builds don't really matter as much at this point because they've got all their relics stacked up. So it's going to come down to fights in the jungle. You get one pick, that can easily set up for a Fire Giant. You get a pick and some extra relics, you can almost guarantee that you can get fire.
Kind of surprised. Enhanced Fire Giant, and we haven't even really seen a Fire Giant dance in this game. So the first Fire Giant of the game going to be Enhanced Aquarius, dropping low to the gank, the wraparound, force to get out with the CC immunity on the ultimate. How Loud doesn't grab anyone either though. Nayhoo, a priority target, yanked back in by the landfall. All relics down on the mid laner and eliminated by Sam for Soccer. Privative out as well. No lockdown from Gamma. Sam off the mark there with the CC, but here comes Aquarius back in the fight with the TP. Aquarius with the final touches on a Privative. 2 down for the Athenian Sages and the Valhalla Valkyries. ErupTCrimson could have been 3, but off the mark there with the Vortexes. And that can open up a tower push here. Good portal, enough damage. 3 down for the Sages.
Like I said, Crimson does not care about Snaddy at this point. He's doing more damage than what Snaddy can output. Snaddy can't re-sustain because that Divine Ruin can come through and ruin all of those opportunities to live throughout the fight. So Snaddy's best defense, which is jump up in the cloud, get 20% of my HP back, and then rejoin the fight, doesn't have that luxury anymore. Crimson's full build. He's hitting like a freight train at this point. There's really not much that the Athenian Sages can do in the fight. And the one benefit that Janus has that very few other gods and mages in general in the game has is being able to stand so far back and be able to snipe opponents out. All he had to do was wait for Nayhoo's Aegis, and as you saw, 1,200 damage to his dome. Not much Nayhoo and the Sages can do about that.
Crimson making Janus look like a top pick, top ban god today. Fire Giant falling down to the Valhalla Valkyries. That bad boy is going to be enhanced. These tier 1 towers in the mid and the left-hand side are going to fall with haste. Tier 2 towers will follow not too far behind the Athenian Sages. Maybe back to the drawing board here.
Athenian Sages going to be on the back foot. Benefit to them as they do have some decent siege defense. Ram, if he wants to go up in the sky, can start a fight out. Put them at half HP if he wants to use the snipe offensively in that case. Nayhoo on a traditional mage has some decent ways to deal with some of the minions as they go through. Either throw out that wildfire, throw out a sigil. You have some pretty easy clear onto the minions as well as some decent CC and burn onto enemy targets if they stand by through. But that's kind of where their best is right now, is on the defense at this point, and that's where the Sages have kind of been forced in these last few team fights, has been defensively. Sure, the Sages have been able to get at least one Fury off of their offensive play, but that was a while ago. It's been a bit since we've seen that. It was actually at that Titan push that we really saw them try and make their mark known to get an objective for themselves by getting that Primal, but outside of that, we just have not seen an offensive play by the Athenian Sages. They've been playing so reactionary to the Valkyries. And these towers, I imagine this first Fire Giant with its buff used to take out all towers on the map, but the Valkyries can find one little pick. They've got easy tools to move towards these Phoenixes.
Well, the Pyromancer goes the way of the Sages, but a tier 1 tower in mid drops to the Valks. Gamma and Wowy teaming up on this left-hand side to take down a tier 2 tower as well. Valkyries splitting up the Sages, sending a couple members mid, a couple members left, trying to divert the Sages' attention to grab all the objectives on the map here, grab some more gold in their pockets, open up the base. Snaddy locked down. Snaddy taking a good chunk of damage there. Not quite as tanky as he could be with the Soul Reaver online, and not full defense-oriented build for Snaddy here. I mean, it's worked out. 5 kills so far. A couple of those last hits, sure. But no other kills on the board for the rest of the Athenian Sages. It's going to be a Phoenix push here with the Enhanced Fire Giant. Jangaru falling so low, forced up to the Palo, goes back in. Aquarius dashing out, doesn't grab the execute. Doesn't matter, though. Jangaru finds one in return. think that was a kill after death there, as Snaddy pushes Gamma and Crimson out, but not before the bird drops on the left-hand side.
And highlighted perfectly right there by Snaddy trying to bird form up to a Crimson, gets hit by an unstable vortex, and Snaddy says, well, that's enough pushing for me. I think I'm done for a little while. And it's afforded by the fact that he just doesn't have a whole lot of defense magic-wise to his name, and what little he does have, Crimson shredding through it. He's already maxed out on his percent pen. He's got a little bit of flat pen added through, and just so much extra burst damage that Soul Reaver's kicking through. Divine Ruin if he finds a proc on it. This Gem of Fate, or this Gem of Focus really keeping him topped off for as much damage as he can do. There's just nothing the Sages can actually really threaten the Valkyries with, unless the Valkyries bring the fight to their home base at that point, which under the Phoenix looked great. Jangaru nearly dies to the Scorching Blink. Gets up in the Palau just in time, forces Sam to ult away, keeps Aquarius caught under the Phoenix. That's their best way through, is to find a defense for the Sages to be able to force the Valkyries in tricky positions. Works out well for them once, but they've got to do it at least a couple more times because the Valkyries are starting to ramp back up again.
Enhanced Fire Giant proving valuable here for the Valks, with towers wiped off the table, the left-hand bird being extinguished as well. Sam for Soccer and Aquarius moving up this left-hand lane. Pushing it down here, splitting the Sages once again. Crimson, Gamma, and Wowy looking in the middle. Jangaru pulling and adapting here, wrapping all the way around the back. Could be a big-time powwow. Jangaru pretty much eliminated in the first fight, like demolished to kick things off. So if that Dodgy can survive just a little bit longer. Whew, and who's not surviving? It's Privative in the backline. Sam for Soccer. Overhead kick there. Execute online. Jangaru takes out Gamma to start things off. Mystic Rush in the back. It's just Aquarius, and it's just Sam. Renjaru takes out Aquarius. Sam able to escape for the moment. ErupTCrimson using those portals to his advantage there, and Jangaru finding a double. And what a turn away there. What a repellence there by the Athenian Sages, finding 3 members of the Valhalla Valkyries.
I just said it. You don't fight them under the Phoenix at this point. The Athenian Sages Phoenix fights where they get to stand their ground inside of the bird, force ultimates, force relics through. That's where they find their success. The biggest win for them was body blocking Aquarius' ultimate, making sure that Privative does not die in that fight, making sure that Snaddy, that Nayhoo, none of them go down to the execute, setting up that potential reset chain for Aquarius. And because Aquarius had expended all of his mobility to go in, can't blink when he's in the middle of combat, has already used the ultimate at that point, he has no choice but to stand his ground and then force the rest of his team forward. Gamma was dead before the fight really kicks off, and because of that, Aquarius has to be that sole front line. Sam then decides, I'm going to make the hero play, jump in the back line and help out my buddy. But then Sam has nothing because he's used his ult to jump in. He's used his overhead kick to get away from Palau. His beads were down going into that fight, so he has no way of escaping. Gets caught out by himself, even with ErupTCrimson giving him as much help as he could with those portals. The Valkyries are just playing so split up mentally under these Phoenix fights that they don't have anything left in the tank once they get to the Phoenixes.
Well, J-Mac, I suppose if there is a silver lining to that 3-man wipe, it's that it wasn't while Fire Giant was up, right? So it didn't allow the Athenian Sages to rush immediately to that objective. Fire Giant back on the map now. Valhalla Valkyries back in force as a 5-god unit, which means they can defend or attack this Fire Giant as well. He kicks things off here. It's Privative in the face of the Valhalla Valkyries, but Snaddy pretty far away here, caught in the middle lane. Teleport in now behind the Valhalla Valkyries is going to be an absolute menace going in on Wowy, who's already dropping low. And look at Jangaru wrapping around the backside, playing the jungler. Crimson takes out Nayhoo to kick things off, and Wowy able to escape for just a moment while the tick damage finishes him off. Sam for Soccer finishes the ADC of the Sages. Jangaru wrecking havoc to the backliners and the frontliners of the Valhalla Valkyries. It's a 2-for-2. Privative caught out to the damage of the Janus. Aquarius with just a few more shots here. It's going to be ErupTCrimson finishing off the support for the Sages. A 3-for-2 to the Valkyries have enough to take out an objective.
The only reason that fight even starts off well for the Valkyries is Crimson finding the first kill in the backline, taking Renjaru out of commission, making sure that he can't do anything, or I should say taking Nayhoo out of that fight there, because we see Snaddy dive to the backline, and it's prioritization in these fights that's so crucial for both these teams. Snaddy says, wow, he's doing a lot of damage. Cool, we take Wowy out of the fight. He's the most consistent damage dealer for this team. Unfortunate for Wowy, he gets stunned on top of the Scorching Blink, which deals that true damage, which hits so hard if you are left inside of the trail. Because of that, he's forced to Aegis early. He's got to use his beads early in the fight. And by the time he gets up onto the horse, the Ring of Fire is already around. He's got to run right out of the Fire Giant pit, gets burned by the ring, and then eventually dies immediately after that one. Jangaru is now playing these fights so much better because he's not being the first one into these fights. You can't, as the Daji, be the first one into the middle of big group ups. If you can find the 1v1, more power to you, but you gotta wait for Snaddy to start things out. Get a relic away, wait for Privative to get in, go a relic away, strip some ultimates out from the enemy team, and then go in and capitalize. Jangaru playing this late game much better than his early game started through.
And if you're looking just purely at slash lines, it's been the right lane show, right? It's been the jungler, it's been the solo lane. But you look at the player damage, I mean, Renjaru's dishing it out. Could see a little bit more, 19k for Nayhoo on this Morgan Le Fay. Definitely needs to see some magical damage come through. But it's not just Snaddy and Jangaru. It's the entirety of the Athenian Sages making it happen. Just so happens that Snaddy and Jangaru grabbed the last hits on those kills. The Valhalla Valkyries once again grouping up around this Fire Giant. The dance, the tango begins once again here at 40 minutes. J-Mac, as we hit one of the longer games that we've seen so far in this SMITE Masters event. Sanford Soccer looking around here. But Nayhoo, absolutely not going to step forward. Same thing goes for Renjaru. And now when we're talking 1v1s, if Sanford Soccer and Jangaru go at it in the jungle, Crimson's looking at this Phoenix on the left-hand side.
Perfect.
Auto's coming through, but a TP out of Snaddy is going to repel the mid laner.
This is one of the best things that Crimson can do. He's
Jangaru.
distracted 2 people. The Valkyries, they can walk in and find any pick that they want. Just keep W King forward. Take anybody that you're able to.
And Crimson has the ultimate online as well, so you can get back to Fire Giant with no problem. Sanford Soccer ripping through. Renjaru, the through space of time, almost taking out Jangaru over on the left-hand side. Wowy finishes off the enemy ADC, as in the backline, Snaddy, forced into that somersault cloud, is going to have to use it to escape. Tier 2 tower under siege here from the Valhalla Valkyries. Aquarius with lockdown on Snaddy, well-timed CC. Gamma with the stun as well. Wowy finding a delayed double kill on this right-hand side. A brilliant move by the Valkyries, putting Crimson on the left-hand side. Aquarius still leading the charge despite being at about an 8th HP. Nayhoo finishes off the solo laner, and Gamma and the rest of the squad able to get out.
You can't send 2 people to defend a single Janus on the left side. He didn't have fire minions, those were regular minions. Crimson did more than he was asked for. His job was, I'm going to go over to the left side, I'm going to force either Snaddy or Jangaru to come over here and deal with me. He gets the best. He gets both of them over there. And so now it's a forced 4v3 on the left side. Yes, Crimson and Jangaru nearly take each other out during a fight through space and time. Apala has to be Aegis away from there. But ErupTCrimson did so much for his team by pulling 2 people away. It forces Renjaru into an awkward spot on the retreat as the team then splits themselves up trying to get out. Snaddy's late into the rotation, and because of that, he's late on the defense and doesn't quite get the memo from his team that, hey, we don't need to defend this Tier 2 tower. We don't need to keep this fight going. Fortunate for him, he still does defend Tier 2, and Left Phoenix is still alive. So silver linings where they lie. The Sages don't lose out anything except for a couple of players, a couple of relics during that. But it's definitely something they didn't need to lose out on. They didn't need to send 2 people to stop Crimson.
We're approaching 43 minutes here, J-Mac, and it's just caution around this Fire Giant. It's caution around the Phoenixes, and you can really feel it's the last set of the day here, day 2 of SMITE Masters, and you can feel that both of these teams are just not ready to go home. I mean, they are clinging on with their fingertips, their last-ditch efforts here to stick around here at hi-rez Studios. And the Athenian Sages and the Valhalla Valkyries are both putting up a gigantic fight.
And their prize is they get a fight against the Niflheim Warriors, another EU powerhouse that just fell to Hex Mambo in the set prior for another second life and a second chance in this team, in this fight to really try and push up towards some of the SPL squads to see if it can be the Valkyries or the Sages have that opportunity to maybe join Hex Mambo if they can find not only a win here, but also against a win against the Warwick's, which has been tough for North America to find the wins against the European squads. You've only seen it once so far in this tournament. That was just a little bit earlier on by the Valkyries, able to take down the Scarabs in their matchup. So an important game for both these teams, but I mean, look at how much damage Wowy is doing. That was a single auto to Snaddy.
And especially with those enhanced ranged autos, Wowy has that opportunity to reach out and really touch someone that Renjaru on the other side isn't going to be able to have the opportunity to do. But I mean, if Wowy's doing that, then Renjaru has the same opportunity. You got to be a little bit closer. So keep an eye on both of these ADCs. Keep an eye on Jangaru's playing these fights fantastically. And keep an eye on Gamma, who's dropping low. Privative dashing in, no lockdown on Gamma. Wowy able to peel for his support player. Aquarius gets out of dodge as well, utilizing some of Maui's, what is that juice called? What is the goo?
The mystical allure?
Yes, that's the stuff.
He throws a fish out.
Yeah, but you step in the goo.
It's a puddle of water.
Is it water?
I'm pretty sure it's water.
I thought it was some mystical...
What, you think a fish is going to live in goop? It's got to live in the water somewhere.
I don't know, man. Mythology's weird. People
You know
be
what?
living in all kinds of stuff.
That is fair. Mythology does be a strange place sometime, but Valhalla Valkyries keeping even here against the Sages at the late game. Again, it's just going to come down to being able to get an ultimate, a relic, getting a knockout onto any of these teams is so vital for this Fire Giant dance, because both these teams have similar burst damage. They have similar confirmation. There's a couple of runic bombs on the Sages side, but you don't really want to use that to try and steal enhanced Fire Giant. You want to save that maybe for the siege after, but if one team wipes on this one, there's not going to need to be a siege at that point. You take a few people out. We're 45 minutes of the game. Respawns are sitting 60, nearly 70 seconds at this point. Could all come down to one more team fight, but if we only see one pick, might just be pick into all three Phoenixes and back away, unless you can find some more afterwards.
J-Mac, we're in that beautiful spot of competitive Smite where 3K pots have been popped. They're on the board. Saw one in Sam for Soccer's pocket. That's no longer there, which means the power has been applied to the jungler for the Valhalla Valkyries, who's chasing down Snaddy. Throws out some autos, throws out some abilities, and actually takes Snaddy down to half HP. Aquarius dashing forward as well. Blink in, Snaddy forced into the somersault cloud. CC going to be down for the next engagement for just a little bit here. Nothing expended for the Valhalla Valkyries except for a single blink on the side of Aquarius. But plenty of engage for the Valks. You got landfall. I mean, worst case scenario, you just through space and time, shotgun into the back line of the Sages. And the Valhalla Valkyries kicking things off on this FG.
Privative dashed up to Crimson. That might be the last thing that Priv gets to do. Look how much damage that Crimson and Wowy are doing to these frontliners. The snipe's off the mark, but the Valkyries keep going.
Oh, Aquarius utilizing those portals to get right back to the Athenian Sages. Landfall. Privative not able to escape. Renjaru taken down by the Janus as well. And 70 seconds are the respawn timers for the Athenian Sages. The Valkyries have dropped low. Snaddy's not done with the Valkyries, not allowing them to back and heal up for free. But 2 down for the Athenian Sages. The Valhalla Valkyries have a bit of time to play with.
Fortunate for the Valkyries, they took too much damage during that fight. Aqua's tanky enough that he could hold this Fire Giant for Wowy, who can resustain through. Crimson's back up to full HP. So there's still a chance for the Fire Giant. Snaddy has steal capabilities. Nayhoo, though, doesn't want to step up. This should be enhanced Fire Giant for the Valkyries, but they've got to make sure to keep Snaddy zoned out. They've got to keep eyes on Jangaru and Nayhoo as well. If they can sneak their way in, but it seems that the Athenian Sages are not willing to coin toss around fire. They'll give this up to the Valkyries and go back to where their strengths lie. Their base defense. Nayhoo is great on this Morgan Le Fay, keeping minions out at this point. Fire Giant being there means that backdoor protection is not really a factor for the Valkyries, so even more important to try and keep these minions out and force that tower aggro onto one of the players instead.
I mean, one of the few spills that we've seen the Valkyries take this game was under that Phoenix in the middle lane. Looks like the Athenian Sages, with only 3 members alive and Wowy doing what ADCs do at 47 minutes, aren't willing to defend the right side Phoenix, but now the Athenian Sages are back in force. All 5 gods on the battlefield here, ready to defend their Titan until the very end. So only one Phoenix goes down. It's going to be the one on the right-hand side. Left side Phoenix, of course, weakened. Middle Phoenix, full HP. Valhalla Valkyries come through. Grab the Pyromancer. So FG, Phoenix, Pyromancer, Valhalla Valkyries wiping the map here and readying their final push into the base of the Sages.
Putting both runic palms in Sam's pocket, probably the best call that the Valkyries can make, because it now allows them to be able to make a 4-1 split. Sam can just drop both of them in, even if only one of them goes off. If he split over to the far left side on that weakened Phoenix, he could probably take it out just by himself. He's just tanky enough with some of the defense items he's afforded to himself to be able to sustain up a little bit. Plus the fact that his shield is as large as it is now with some of the buffs that came through to Ravana, I believe, upping up to 27% of his health when that shield is fully stacked up. Means that he's got just more HP to deal with than many other junglers can at this point through. Athenian Sages will be forced back onto defense, and because their right side is down, if the Valkyries put all of their eggs over to the left side, they can force somebody to stay so far out of position to deal with that right side wave. They should be able to take a Phoenix for themselves, but the Valkyries are playing this one so slow. Getting the minions grouped up in mid to try and help out, it's not necessary. With how much damage they have, I would imagine they would try and keep a fight forced here, but Valkyries are going to take their time and, again, awkwardly split themselves on the map.
Oni empowered fire minions. Worst nightmare if you are the Athenian Sages.
Not fun.
Stomping down the lane, insane amounts of damage, just backing up the already empowered and enhanced Valhalla Valkyries. Looking at this middle lane Phoenix here. Privative, Snaddy, Renjaru, Nayhoo on the defense. Jangaru hovering around, waiting for that prime opportunity, not for the initial engagement, but it's that moment, it's that second of hesitation where the frontliners go in when a jungler really does their best work. Sam for Soccer and Aquarius. Aquarius all the way wrapping around onto the ADC of the Athenian Sages. Crimson forced out early in this fight. Aquarius forced out of the Phoenix line as well. Jangaru not able to get anything of substance off of that ultimate. ErupTCrimson takes out Privative in the backline. Sam for Soccer finishes off the mid laner for the Athenian Sages. Middle lane Phoenix falls as well. Renjaru through the portal and into the grayscale. Snaddy falling low, not even willing to finish him off. The Valhalla Valkyries take down Snaddy. A triple for Crimson, 8-0-4. Janus going crazy, a deicide. The Athenian Sages fall to the Valhalla Valkyries. Game 1 goes the way of the Order Squad.
And this is what happens when you put so much pressure over to the right side to try and keep one player down, and then you don't keep up that pressure. You don't do anything more with it. You killed Aquarius 3 times in the early game. That's great. You put him 2 levels down. He's essentially a non-factor at that point, being so far behind, at least through the first 20, 25 minutes of the game. The problem is the Sages then didn't try and put pressure by the Gold Fury. They didn't try and go over to the Pyromancer to get a fight there. They just kept trying to hammer through the right lane, and it obviously is not going to keep working at that point. Dodgy works so well in the early game when there's so much easier ways of executing that ultimate, getting beats away, being able to find those Pal-Laos. But because they focused so heavily on this one single Achilles and didn't get much beyond there, it's not much more the Sage can do in the late game, except for those base defenses, which looked really good earlier on. The Valkyries probably could have just ended that game a little bit sooner.
And I mean, J-Mac, worth mentioning ErupTCrimson on this Janus, making it look like an S-tier character. The Athenian Sages might have to think, do we ban this one out? We'll have to find out as we head towards game number 2 after a short break. Stick around.
game 1, but a Valkyries win nonetheless. Goes the distance, but it gets there towards the very end. Now, you might have had to wait a long time for that game to end, but you don't want to wait a long time right now if you want to get the V Shoujo skins. Now, for those of you who have already waited, you've waited too long. It has gone slightly less on sale, I guess is the right way to describe it, right? The first 4 weeks, it was at the most discounted. We are now in week 5, going towards week 6. So you need to get in on this deal while you can. Direct skins are currently the cheapest they'll be, except for the last 4 weeks. And same thing for the buy all. 70% off, so you want to make sure that you get in on those while you can to get all of the V Shoujo skins, represent your favorite VTubers out there across all platforms. Of course, if you can't get them this week or next week, then the price is going to jump up. And once you get to week 9 and beyond, you won't even get the buy all. You'll have to buy them individually for $1,500 each. So you want to make sure you get in on it while you can and get the deal. Speaking of deals, that last game was a really good one. You got 50 minutes of really great SMITE, all for the price of one game. And so, looking at it, Alpha Jackal, games that go that length are always really interesting. Mainly because you think back to it and you remember like that first blood that happened all the way in solo lane. It feels like so long ago. And it doesn't seem like it matters as much anymore. Aqua was the one who falls down. But because of the length of this game, you start looking at the team fights in depth and so much. But at the end of the day, the Valkyries are the ones that get to stand on top and have the first win.
Yeah, from a coach's perspective, what they're going to be looking at is they're going to be looking at the late-game team fights. What went right? What went wrong? Is there anything we could do differently position-wise, target selection-wise? That's the big takeaway from this game from a coach's and from a team's perspective. The early game, almost a moot point, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, this early game fight that we see here from San Francisco was fantastic, but it gets to the 32-minute mark point. As you mentioned, that's just a distant memory. It's what happens in the here and now that matters.
And we saw good groupings, and of course a lot of people were mentioning it as we saw it was Crimson on the Janus. That is going to take away quite a good bit of accolades from this one, right? And to the point where we were saying if he gets it again, someone's probably doing something wrong.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time when you have a pick like this that's just turns up to a tournament unexpectedly and is popping off like it is doing, you have to swallow your pride and ban it at some point. Much like teams are banning out a couple of gods away from Johnny. I mean, we saw it back in the day with Sino's Naja, to name something just on the top of my head. It's a respect ban that you just have to put out there. Say, okay, you got us, play something else, please, and we'll beat you on that.
You gotta force him to be uncomfortable. It's 3 games today he has played on this Janus. That is 3 games he has not died. It is ridiculous to me that he hasn't been able to do so. Look, Janus is a slippery god, and we talk about that a lot, but if you look at it, your front line's doing well. Aquarius may be bullied a little bit this one, right? 2-7, which is definitely the worst slash line on his team, but when it comes with 12 assists, and also it means you get a 6-2, 8-0, and 5-1 for your carries, I think you're willing to ignore that a lot, especially considering, Priv, unfortunately, and Renjaru on the other side, 1-5 and 0-6. So definitely some fight changes that maybe need to be addressed, as you were mentioning, because once you get to 30 minutes, there's a certain point where you're just like, all right, if you're on the Sages, why was Renjaru dying every single time? Like, why is he 1-5? What do we need to do to protect him? And on the other side, you're also thinking, man, if Crimson can do that in a 50-minute game and still not die, I mean, we just keep locking him in. To the point where, and this feels so weird to say, almost dirty to say, do you first pick a Janus if it's let through?
I don't think you first pick it.
Okay.
Okay, so if your first pick selection, you have your first pick and then you have your second, third, you pick it then. If you're the second side, you pick it third pick before they ban it.
Okay.
So you top 3 it, but you don't first pick it.
We're not worried about the Sages taking it. We're just worried, like, it's either getting banned or the Valkyries are getting it.
I mean, Nayhoo is a fantastic player, don't get me wrong. I just don't see him...
There goes the conversation anyway.
I just don't see him picking Janus, and I think the Sages agree.
Yeah, I think he was in the same boat where he just sits back and, I mean, very much, hey, do you think you can play it? Do you want to play it? No, let's just get rid of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's as easy as that. You might not even have the do you want to play it, just say, you know what, guys, we got, just stop it. We just need to get rid of him. First ban Janus. Feels really good. Thor and Maui even joining him. So
I was gonna say about
the Sages are very much looking at what has been going well for the Valkyries today and saying no.
Yeah, I mean, last game, Maui's Landfalls had a huge impact on late game team fights. Been bringing in 2-3 people, forcing a lot of relics, forcing a lot of beads, and getting rid of the two main issues from the last game forces Valhalla Valkyries to do something completely different in this second game. And if they've won off one strategy, you know they're going to try and play that again. So if you force them into something else, it could throw them off their game just that little bit.
Well, we've been talking about a lot of gods that are 100% pick ban. Baba Yaga's still in the ban column right now. Serket, Marty are the 3 bans from the Valkyries. We had just mentioned the ones for the Sages. Hachiman was the first pick, which has not been too surprising. We've seen that a lot. But with Terra left open, the Valkyries get their front line instantly. Alpha Jackal, they get Tyr and they get Terra, and I think that is terrifying.
That is team fight in a nutshell right there. T for team fight.
Yeah, you're going to drag us to 50 minutes? Cool, let's play.
Yeah. I mean, we're comfortable going to 10 minutes, we're comfortable going to 50 minutes. You pick the battleground and we'll be there to make sure we win those fights. I mean, the Raven for Sanford Soccer, it did well in that last game. I'm not so certain it did so well to the point where you have to pick it up here, considering your pick was a Darji, which isn't exactly the best matchup for them.
It definitely feels like an interesting pick. I mean, you know, maybe CC immunity, like, it's nice against Terra, it's nice against Tyr, but like you said, I'm not sold on him being the best right now. Maybe that's just something, maybe I'm behind. I'm very notably self-assured, not a great jungler, so I think that's something, that we get to see. Maybe the Sages have something up their pocket, up their sleeve, to try and make this work. Agni, though, has been very solid in the mid lane. And the Valkyries, I was thinking we would see a Ram, but the other one, at least over the last month, who's been in that conversation in the Pro League has been the Xbalanque. How are you feeling about Xbal right now?
I think he's in a decent spot. I mean, with everybody losing power overall in their builds, the fact that his passive didn't get touched means that he overall gets a net gain compared to everybody else.
True.
So I think it's a fantastic pickup opportunity, especially when you compare it to the fact that they've got the Terra. The Earthen Fury will get procced instantly with the fact that he's got those poison darts. So it's a good opportunity to combo somebody down very quickly at level 5.
Something that we've seen several times, right? Yeah. I mean, sometimes you don't even have to be there. We've actually seen plenty of times where Xbalanque just straight up doesn't even rotate. He's just going to pop his ult. Also, the only god who can hit structures from outside of the structure when he pops his ult. So something that works out pretty well for him. Aphrodite, Odin banned out here by the Valkyries, which, given how many of their gods already can't escape walls, pretty good choices. And then Kali, Fenrir. Like you'd said, shots have been going towards the jungle every single time. How can you control Sam for soccer? And so that has been the goal for the Sages, to push him onto yet another god. Is there anything, if you're looking at Tyr, Terra, Xbalanque, is there like a jungler that stands out in your mind as like, oh, that's got a lot of good synergy, or is it just kind of pick of the litter?
It's just pick of the litter. I think the Fenrir definitely would have been at the top of my mind because you bring them into the Earthen Fury.
Yeah.
The Odin sort of would trap them in, but they're the ones that have banded away themselves. Doesn't really speak to me as a Sanford Soccer really playstyle god. I mean, Thor would have been a good pick, but that's been banned away too. But it's going to be the Erlang Shen. We finally get to see the Erlang Shen. It's been banned a lot. It's never been picked when it's not been banned. Now we finally get to see it picked up here, and it's going to go into the hands of Sanford Soccer.
So it always feels like, and you know, I think Osiris belongs in this conversation, right? When Erlang Shen was big, Osiris in the jungle was still pretty big at that point. When he lost his knockup, he kind of disappeared for a little while. Has the itemization shifted enough this week specifically, this patch, to make Erlang Shen in the jungle feel good, or does he belong in the solo lane? Like, where does, well, I guess with the Tyr here, we kind of know where he's going into the jungle. What does he have enough on his auto attacks? Like, can he still do what we want him to do?
I'm going to be with you. When Erlang Shen lost his knockup, I thought he was the worst god in the game by a country mile. I mean, that was horrific for him in terms of a personal blow to his viability. Since then, he's received 4 or 5 buffs just to try and get him back up to the level. And this last patch, the itemization changes and the buff that he received have really pushed him over the edge. I mean, you're going to see him build into the Dawnbringer hammer, and that one is going to just allow him, when he ults, to control a large amount of space. The issue that Erlang Shen has is if he goes into any god with a slow or a cripple, he then becomes a lot less valuable. Who has both of them on his kit? The Ares.
Yep. Something that could, well, like you just said, cause more trouble than maybe you really wanted to deal with. Ares, though,
It's
some
just
of
a
it is
fantastic
dependent
Ares pick.
on the chains. You really like it.
It would be a fantastic Ares pick. I mean, have a look at who's got CC
yeah.
immunity on their side. It's just going to be the tier. Terra, going to be forced to get beat. Xbalanque, if you catch him out before his Rising Jaguar, he's not going to be able to get away without dispensing his beats. Erlang Shen has to get beats at some point. If he goes Blink first Relic, you're killing him on cooldown. This is a phenomenal pickup.
Let alone, you hit him with chains. Good luck to,
Yeah.
to like every single person on the Valkyries. Oh, man. Now, it does still come down to on-field play, but in essence, that's a really good pick. They get the Guan Yu as well. It feels like the Raven's the only thing that's standing out on this team that's like, okay, maybe this doesn't work, maybe it works, but seeing the Sages in full, how are you feeling about their composition?
I love it. I am a huge proponent of the Ares pick into this matchup. As I said,
I
love it. I think this draft really does do everything you wanted to. You have Protection Shred coming out from the Guan Yu, you have massive area control coming out from the Ares, big follow-up from the Agni, Hachiman, and Ravana, and good dive potential from the Ravana and Guan Yu together. It's almost a perfect composition to do every little thing good in this game of Smite.
Well, that's what the Sages need right now. Trying to push us to Game 3 with a win. It sounds like you're on board with the draft. At least, again, it's always that play on field. Sometimes the draft will win you a lot. And the Sages are in a good spot. Looking for, presumably, a mid lane. Something to give Crimson. Since the Janus is gone, you've got to go further into the God pool. And they didn't ban a lot of mages outside of the Janus and the Agni. Yeah, well, I guess the Baba Yaga as well on the other side. They were all available.
Yeah.
A lot of opportunity. We've seen Discordia a good few. But it's Tiamat locked in. You seemed kind of about it.
I mean, has CC immunity on the ground stance ultimate, but I would have thought Discordia would have been the pickup here. I mean, just to allow the Erlang Shen a bit more presence in the jungle with that passive, or allow the Xbalanque to be a bit more threatening in lane, or allow the Tier to potentially get a solo kill onto the Guan Yu, and has that CC immunity with that Apple of Discord, good, area control with the Strife. I thought that would have been a great pick, but the Tiamat also does that just a little bit more dangerously, I would say. So you're having to commit yourself a little bit more, which, given the rest of their draft, makes a little bit of sense. This is a risky commit-all draft into your team fights.
A lot of opportunity here for the Valkyries. Again, win, and you move on. Lose, and it's not the end of the world just yet. For the Sages, lose, and you're eliminated, so you have a lot of pressure. And what I think is beautiful about this is it showcases, at least in draft, how important one God pick can be.
Yeah.
And how much things can change. We've seen it sometimes with like a Daji when you have like 5 people who have no CC immunity, and then your second pick, that 10th lock-in, you just gonna go, okay, cool, give me the Daji. Ares, in this case, gets to do the exact same thing. Chains are feeling really good, still feel pretty good against the Tiamat, but is Tiamat enough to placate some of the difficulties they're going to have to deal with, knowing the support has a pretty good counter matchup?
I think at this point in time for the Valkyries, their composition has to come down to, do they team fight well enough around the Earth and Fury, around the extra damage protections that they're going to get, around the extra health that they're going to get from that ultimate? If so, it will be a successful fight for them against the Ares. If not, the Ares is going to be running this game for them.
Well, sometimes it's all up to the Ares. And right now, that's what the Sages need. Again, do or die. If they lose this game, they are eliminated. They managed to drag the Valkyries out to 50 full minutes. Now the question is whether or not they can do it again, but this time, try to find a win. You seem like you're leaning a little more Sages this time.
Yeah,
We're looking at a Game 3?
I'm leaning all my channel points again into the Sages. If it was risky last time we did it with Dolson, but I feel like you're a little bit more, receptive of it.
I'm more receptive to you betting your channel points.
Yeah,
you can do that. I'm not going to go for it. Chat, you bet your channel points all the time.
I mean, the only thing we haven't talked about as well is the amount of protections the Ares will give his team as well, with his shackles as well as his bolster defensive, but that's for another time.
Yeah, something that he's maybe actually just going to showcase. Maybe you don't even have to talk about it. We can just see it happen in action. It's Game 2, and the Sages' life on the line.
It's Dimes and J-Mac and Doug bringing you what could potentially be the final game of Smite here. The Smite Masters day number 2 as the Athenian Sages look to force a Game 3 and escape going home by the narrowest of margins here. The Valhalla Valkyries, ErupTCrimson, finally forced off of the Janus after a day of undying. I mean, going onto the Tiamat, it's a little different than the Janus, but what a performance getting forcing a first ban Janus.
Yeah, it's not as safe as Janus per se because you can't walk through walls. You don't have that easy luxury of moving yourself across the map, but it's still a very safe pick in mid. CC immunity in the ultimate, a leap or a dash backwards depending on which stance you are in and which one you're swapping over towards. And just a pick that's worked out really well for Crimson over the history of this god's release and of Crimson's career with this god. So I have no complaints on the Tiamat. I agree with the Dessa. I would have maybe liked to have seen a Discordia that we can facilitate Sam for soccer a little bit on this Erlang Shen, because until he gets that first item or two online, really not going to be the most threatening jungle out there, but having immediate access to things like blink into a pin or blink immediately and use that mink after just for some quick chase gives Erlang Shen a lot of potential in the jungle, and for my money is worth probably the best spot for him. I don't imagine that we'll see Sam really drag out too much damage into his build, maybe 3 items at most, and then focusing on defense. As mentioned, things like the Dawnbringer make him so easy to be able to get access to fast defense. Jump in the middle of the backline with a blink, ult 2 or 3 people, all of a sudden now you have 30% extra protections, movement speed, and then you also get the mitigation from the buff that came from him in this 10.6. A lot of big changes to Erlang and a lot of good items that are working for him now.
And I mean, with the power that we know Xbalanque possesses come mid to late game, and the damage that we've seen Tier do so far in the SMITE Masters, no surprise that Sam for Soccer is looking to facilitate the rest of the Valkyries. And meanwhile, the Athenian Sages Privative, the thing that really sticks out to me is this Ares pickup. Now, normally in tournaments like this, J-Mac, it's a little bit later on in the tournament when the script calls for the Ares to come out and start forcing things to, game 3s and games 5s. But here, Privative finds it in a game number 2.
When you're hand-delivered a composition like this on the opposite side, there's no better time to pull out an Ares when 3 of the gods rely so heavily on their mobility, that being the Terra. You throw out a chain, well, now she can't double dash through her monolith or her wall to escape. You chain up the tier, well, now he suddenly can't fearless your entire backline. He's forced to either use beads or an ultimate to get out. You throw a chain on a Sam, and it's curtain call at that point.
And speaking of chains, none available for Privative. Sam for Soccer makes an early rotation to the left-hand side. The Valhalla Valkyries, not enough damage to finish off Privative here pre-2 minutes, while Aquarius falls low, meanwhile, in the solo lane. And a lot expended by both junglers here. Blinks down across the... Jangaru not even blowing a blink on that gank in the solo lane. So, Sam for Soccer on the back end.
Just a bit off the mark with the pin. Could have waited a little bit longer. Waited for some of the CC from Gamma to go through and try and guarantee that. Maybe keep Privative away from the tower just a tad bit longer, but... therein lies one of the weaknesses of Erlang Shen, is his early game damage really isn't all that great compared to your standard assassin or even some of your other warriors that have a little bit more ability damage in hand. His basic attacks do hit a little bit harder now with the buff to the dog passive, but just doesn't quite have enough until that first real item is online. Because of the damage nerf across the board to things like the Golden Blade, it's even harder for him to really get that damage through. And I'm honestly surprised that he went to the dual lane. It's a better matchup for him this early as long as chain is down. Has a good target with Privative, but all Priv's got to do is pop bolster defense, and all of a sudden he's a lot tankier and a lot harder to kill.
If you're the Valkyries, though, you're feeling pretty good that Sam is still has that mindset, right? Even though it's a more facilitative jungle pick, you've got sort of a mid to late game draft style with the Xbalanque and the tier rotating out of solo lane. I mean, I'm feeling pretty good if my jungler's making these aggressive plays and trying to create space across the map for the rest of my squad. Privative forcing forward, trying to sneak away that purple buff, but the Valkyries able to secure that one for themselves as the rest of the buffs spawn across the map and go down to the respective owners.
And Fire does a lot to these jungle camps. It's one of Ares' best perks right now, is being able to clear out some of the jungle a little bit easier, put some threat on those camps. So it does force Gamma and Wowy to at least answer to that and try and go for that immediate burst after. And this is exactly what Gamma has to worry about. Is if Priv steps up, he doesn't have a dash target. He's not able to freely dash through these waves with that monolith combo to be able to clear that one out easily for Wowy. So this is a very, very low clear lane for the Valhalla Valkyries. I don't imagine we see Wowy and Gamma get much pressure in this lane unless Sam continues to stick around this side of the map. But now that 5 is up for Renjaru, beads are there too, this is still a tough gank for Sam.
No ultimate for Ares this time. Sam for Soccer, ultimate online. Privative certainly to fall here. It's going to go down to Sam for Soccer for first blood. Jangaru rotating in. There's a blink onto Gamma. Mystic Rush connects with 2, but a great dash through a monolith from Gamma locks down Renjaru and Jangaru and allows the support Terra to escape.
And that's going to give that Soul Surge over to the Valkyries, who can farm up a little bit of that. Since Wowie's so healthy, he can stick around and get that extra gold, that extra XP. But that's what I was saying through there, is until this ultimate comes up from Priv, as long as chains are down, you have a great target to go into this lane. You can try and take out Priv, because two of your gods that would not normally need to fear the chain, as soon as those are gone, well, now you've got the option to dash in through Monolith, get those roots, to dash through wall to close up gap, and to be able to continue chasing down with the Mink. Sam waiting for that ultimate, not throwing it immediately, probably the most important fact there, because if he jumps that ultimate immediately, now he loses out on some of that extra CC that his teammate was lacking to try and keep that fight up.
Now, my question here, J-Mac, both of these hunters, Renjaru and Wowy, have pretty decent escape tools, right? The Rising Jaguar, CC immunity, very long ranges. There's a great lockdown stun from Gamma. And Renjaru, of course, can just hop on the horsey and get out of dodge. Does that mean that these two junglers are going to be focusing their attentions to other lanes, or does that mean they're just going to have to try a little bit harder and put forth a little more effort in order to secure kills in the duo lane?
Sam's probably just going to be looking at Priv if he does come over to the duo lane anytime while Privative is over there at that point. Otherwise, you could probably just leave Renjaru alone for a little bit. They're going to be hunters unless you get them down 3-4 kills in the early game. Once 20-25 minutes comes through, they're hunters. They're going to hold W left click. They're going to do a lot of damage with their in-hands. So at this point, it really is focusing out some of the easier to grab targets. Unfortunately for Sam, the easiest target for him to go for is Privative and Snaddy if Snaddy's ultimate is down. But unless we see Snaddy kind of pull what we like to see a lot in the SPL, the solo lane, I'm going to ult the totem just because I can kind of mentality, probably unlikely we'll see Snaddy's ult unless he uses it for initiation up against Aqua or uses it for a retreat if Aquarius gets the better end of a trade over there. So unfortunate for Sam, his best target is Privative. Maybe fortunate for him that he still at least has a target this early through, or if he can catch maybe the dash from Nayhoo. But there's a lot of factors for Sam where he has to wait for X or Y in order for him to try and grab some opportunity.
And is there enough beads burning potential on the Valhalla Valkyries? Is there enough CC to strip away some of that CC immunity potential to allow Sam to follow up?
Oh, absolutely. You have Aquarius in the late game. He can dive in immediately with that Fearless ultimate in blue stance to be able to take beats away from a carry. A Fearless is always a good option to do so. Crimson, probably not the best opportunity, but you do have that Ruination, that second ability in flight stance to be able to continue to try and put out some range CC, but unlikely to take anything from there. Gamma on the Terra, while the root might not scare the beats from somebody, being able to get a stun with the wall is there. So there's opportunities for Sam to capitalize on burnt beads, but they're small factors, and it requires other frontliners to be alongside him to do so.
Well, Smite Masters Day number 2 starting to settle into some of these builds on this 10.6 Season of Souls patch. The Devil's Gloves have become standard here on the ADCs. Same thing goes for that first item, Spear of Desolation pickups in the middle lane. Just great penetration, great stats all around, no surprise there. Tainted Steel online here for Snaddy. Walk me through that starter.
Tainted Steel is just a good item when you don't know what you want to go as a soul laner. Do you want to go Axe? I don't know. Do you want to go Sigil? Maybe. Bluestone isn't really necessary for a Guan Yu. He doesn't need all that extra bonus damage. Tallow Assault does plenty of it at this point, and you can see just how much he's able to fight up against Aqua for it. So whenever you don't know exactly what to go and you look across the board and you see Sustain from Aquarius and Self-Regard, you see Self-Sustain from Sam, you see Team Sustain from Gamma, it's a good option just in general. Plus, depending on what you're fighting up against, you have two great options either in the Tainted Amulet or the Tainted Breastplate to give you an immense amount of physical or magical defense depending on who you want to focus out.
Gamma dodges out of chain there for Privative, locked down with the totem. Walls off the mark there, Privative not stunned, but here comes Jangaru around the way here. Gamma falling low, Gamma just pushing forward so aggressively. Kind of a bad spot there, and Jangaru capitalizes on Gamma pushing forward a little bit too far there. Evens it up 1-1. The Valhalla Valkyries take a spill there in the duo lane, and gold, for all intents and purposes, is dead even. Looking at levels across the map is Wowy's getting dove here by Priv and Jangaru. Wowy up into the Rising Jaguar. Lights go out. Mystic Rush. Jangaru finds a second out of the jungle, and the Athenian Sages now have a slight lead.
Just unfortunate for Wowy that there's still 3 people hanging around. As soon as he sees that Jangaru is near purple, he's got to know that there's going to be an extra gank coming through, no matter even if you pull it to the tower. And because he pulled the buff to the tower, he doesn't really have a good opportunity to try and secure that one for himself. Xbalanque really doesn't have great clear in that regard up against something like a jungle camp. You throw out your poison darts, sure, you get some burst, but it's a lot of tick damage afterwards, so not wanting to expend Rising Jaguar to try and secure a buff just means that if it doesn't die at 400 HP to a tower, Jangaru has not only good clear to steal it away, but also good damage to follow up, plus a form of immunity to get out of tower as soon as he does take it, means that Privative can step up and make it pretty easy for himself. And even going back to how that started is Gamma's trying to play so offensively to try and keep Privative locked down. He's stepping up, he's throwing out wall, hitting him with the autos to slow him down. He's not paying attention to the fact that there could be a gank coming through. Like, oh man, why is Privative still walking up at me? Why is Renjaru walking through the lane over to this fight? Maybe I should get out. By the time he realizes this, there's already a chain around his waist because of Privative, and now he has nowhere to go, and sets up an easy rotation for Jangaru to capitalize.
Sam rotating over to this left-hand side, maybe looking to make an impact, just like Jangaru did a few moments ago. And if you're an Athenian Sages fan, you appreciate at 2-0-0 that Jangaru is making his presence known around this map. I mean, that's how Sam for Soccer affected the early game just last game on this same Ravana pickup. It's by getting going early, getting going consistently, really allowing the rest of his team to ratchet up.
I am puzzled that Sam went for Frostbound Hammer compared to something like Dawnbringer. I mean, Frostbound's not as potent as it once was. You don't get that same big impact slow chasing targets down as much so as you did before this season. So maybe curious that he is going forward, considering you want to keep that continuous chase down. Could get some easy reapplication of it, but I just feel that you don't get the same impact as something like a Dawnbringer could bring to the team, but you're locking down one target, more benefit to you.
Pull in for Privative, but who cares? Sam for Soccer yoinks him right back in. Meteors raining down from Nayhoo. Valhalla Valkyries are not deterred at all. ErupTCrimson finds one for the Tiamat. And I think of any of these players that we've seen today, the one person you don't want to get going is ErupTCrimson.
Yeah, Crimson is certainly a player who can have some strong impact. The Tiamat going to be a little less so. Early game on that god, not as potent. Instead, picks on a Sam. Could be so easy for the Sages. He's used everything to find a kill against Privative that didn't have anything left in the tank for after. And now with Aquarius over here, very awkward positioning for the Valkyries to, whether that be to try and start for a Fury or maybe try and find an extra pick to go for that Fury. But with Aqua here, might as well try and make use of this teleport to some degree. Instead, they're not going to go for the objective. Instead, it'll be Oracle Harpies for the Valkyries. Maybe not even that with Jangaru sticking around. Valkyries are playing a little questionably. They're investing so much to keep Privative down, but Privative's ahead at this point.
Yeah, just a curious teleport there from Aquarius. You're going to lose some farm on the right-hand side. You're going to lose a couple of camps as well. And what do you really get for it? A little skirmish around the Harpies. Sure, Stygian Beacon now online. Could be a good opportunity for Aquarius to make his presence felt here. Valkyries capturing the Stygian Beacon. So far, Privative's not stepping forward. A juggle from Aquarius just to keep the support Ares off of the objective. The first beacon of the game goes down to the Valks.
Privative still chasing out Aqua. Decent heal. We'll keep him from going down to the fire. Privative wants to keep this fight going. Pull's only going to get Gamma, so we'll be just fine, even though Beacon does go over to the Valkyries. It's Sam in danger again on the right side now.
Ooh, mistimed ultimate there. Locked down. Snaddy almost finding the grayscale there, but in fact it's going to be Sam for Soccer dropping down to Jangaru. Snaddy escaping with just a fraction of HP there. The Athenian Sages so far leading this game. I mean, last game it was pretty much dead even gold for like 35 minutes, and already the Athenian Sages starting to pocket a little bit more than their opposition.
And item number 2 for Privative is exactly why I'm not a big fan of Frostbound Hammer. You got one person who's going to be a nice and easy slow to apply. What do? Grab a Wing Blade for yourself and benefit the remainder of your team. That Wing Blade is going to get so much value on these ganks up against Sam, because he didn't have it in the previous fight against him. Now is it for any other, and as long as he can avoid being slowed by that little Minotaur right there, Privative can get so much value from this item to effectively nullify what Sam has gone for the second, which is why I would rather have seen the Dawnbringer. Sure, you only get the real impact of Dawnbringer from the ultimate, but you're almost using it anyways when you're going in for the fight. When you want to find a pick onto some of these frontliners and you want to try and take out a backliner, you're going to use ult anyway. So getting a one-time 10 to 15 second slow from a Frostbound is so much less impactful than that mitigations that you're going to get from your ultimate already, plus the protections and the movement speed to keep these chases going.
You know, we really haven't seen a huge, impactful no escape. I mean, we're not even at 15 minutes yet, but it's going to be those big 2-3-man Ares ultimates. Speaking of impact, though, the Athenian Sages walk up to the Gold Fury and take it out without even a look from the Valkyries. In return, the Valks are going to start up this Pyromancer, but Snaddy's here to answer the call, forcing Gamma off the objective and allowing the rest of the Sages to make the rotation over. Just a Gold Fury. I'm not even going to call it a steal, a sneak. That was just a straight-up objective confirm the Valhalla Valkyries caught with their pants down.
Yeah, this is good positioning by the Sages. You go for the objective, and you realize we don't need everybody on this side of the map. So Snaddy going to go head over towards that Pyromancer and make sure that the Valkyries can't take that one out and make it an objective trade. While, at least at the beginning of the game, Gold Fury more valuable in the immediate, it's what you do with the Pyromancer after that can maybe make that one a bit more impactful if the Valhalla Valkyries were able to grab that one through. So because they're not able to, Snaddy able to get just pure net gain for his team. It's now afforded them 3,000 gold, and a lot of that coming in the pocket of Jangaru at this point. The 5k experience is going to be so impactful for these fights as well, because dual lane's 2 levels down, at least for the Hunter. Jungle's 2 levels down. Sam hasn't even gone back to base yet to get a second relic, so no chance he can step up in a fight here. And with Pyromancer for the Sages, they're just going to continue to expunge that lead just so much further and further.
About a 4K, a little under 4K, 3 and change here for the for the Athenian Sages gold lead. Aquarius forced out Renjaru, making the long trip from duo lane over to solo to take out this tier 1 tower and grab even more gold for the Athenian Sages. He's going to head back to base, finish off those chin size in just a moment here. Nayhoo dash down. This is an opportunity for Sam to make his presence felt. Nayhoo dropping down, but the damage finally comes through for Sam for Soccer. Is it too little too late, though? Yanked back in from the no escape out of Privative. Snaddy is here, running in. Cavalry charge, locking down Gamma. Privative sending out those flames, scorching the competition. Renjaru sending out auto attacks. Meanwhile, in the backline, Tiamat, ErupTCrimson, being the target of Jangaru, who's just going to walk down the middle laner. Aquarius drops down as well. A double for the Hachiman. Jangaru takes out Crimson, and what a wipe. Only Wowy, the remaining member of the Valkyries, still alive on the battleground.
You can't expend that much and go that far on a dive to try and kill an Agni. Sam for Soccer took so long to get the kill onto Nayhoo that the entire rest of the team was able to rally back through. And the biggest thing that I mentioned right before that Pyromancer started is that Sam didn't get to go back to base. He didn't have his second relic ready. Because of that, he didn't have beads for the no escape. So what happens is Priv walks back in. He grabs immediately with an ultimate, pulls Sam back in, sets up Gamma as well, because his bubble, his only CC immunity, actually got burned away just prior to that fight as well. I believe Jangaru able to take that one away. And because of that, it's 2 pulls back in. And the Valkyries are so far out of position, diving for one player all the way, as you can see where the surge is, to tier 2 tower to find that kill. Gives the Sages so much time to rally back through.
And the Sages transitioned that 4-man wipe into a tier 2 tower in the middle lane as well. So breaking open the base here for the Valhalla Valkyries. One less objective between the Sages and a game number 3. Privative chunking away at Sam for Soccer. Jangaru in as well. Sam falling low, no escape coming through. Sam able to use CC immunity to get out of dodge, but Snaddy is in the backline, locking down the jungler. The flames coming out from Privative are going to finish off Sam for Soccer. 1 down so far for the Valkyries. The Sages, where does their attention turn to? Tier 1 and Tier 2 tower in the middle lane. Gone, only a Tier 2 on this right-hand side. Gold Fury, respawning in just a moment here, might be the next objective for the Sages.
This might be the most value that we've seen come from an Ares, probably ever, in all honesty. At least here in this tournament, this is probably the best Ares draft that you could hope for, is at least what the Valkyries have gone up against it. 4 gods that rely so heavily on their mobility, 3 in particular, that just get absolutely stopped in their tracks once that first chain connects through. That as long as Privative saves chain for a team fight, the Sages essentially win that one. All he's got to do is chain one person, and that's almost guaranteed either going to get beads or going to get an ultimate to try and get away from at this point. You don't even need the no escape. You don't need that ultimate from Privative to be the impact. You just need a single chain. You just need Snaddy to be able to capitalize off it, because in that last fight, Priv gets the ultimate, forces the beads away from Sam. Snaddy says, word, I guess I'll just jump on the horse and chase you down now because you can't get away from me, and forces Sam to separate himself out of that fight. Absolutely love the Ares pick from Privative. Don't imagine it's one that you ban away, and again, this is if this game does end up going towards 3. But it's certainly a pick that you have to keep in the back of your mind now, knowing that not only does Privative have an Ares, but he's willing to pull it out in desperation matches.
Dude, tournament after tournament after tournament, going back years. I mean, all the World Championship after World Championship, backs against the wall, support players turn to Ares, and for some reason, it always works. The script cannot be more clear, J-Mac, and as much as the first game was dead even neck on neck for 35 minutes, the Athenian Sages have opened this game to about a 5k gold lead as the Fire Giant is going to be started up here by the Athenian Sages. Only Aquarius from the Valkyries here in the face of the Sages, trying to create pressure, trying to create space. The rest of the Valkyries completely out of position. Here comes Terra, here comes the mid laner. But no, the Valkyries completely let this one go. The Athenian Sages are going to capitalize. Taking out a Fire Giant Snaddy, dropping low, up onto the horse. Pin isn't going to finish off the kill. And the Valkyries now only settling for a tier 2 tower on the left-hand side while the Sages have Fire Giant wrapped around their waist.
And the Sages immediately go towards the right side, tier 2 tower to trade. So much expended on the left to try and keep that one going through. Sam for Soccer using his ultimate to try and lock down Snaddy. Snaddy then forced to ult, but he used his TP just to slow things down on the left. That's the important part of it. As Snaddy realizes, I don't need to be here. Fire Giant's at 15% HP. My team can do this. I'll go ahead and try and delay the Valkyrie so that way we can have something more to do after the Fire Giant. That's the important part that a lot of teams sometimes struggle with. Once we get the Fire Giant, what do? Do we all go back to base and reset? Do we push for a tower? Snaddy makes that so much easier for his team and says, okay, you guys can push for a tower because I can go back here and defend. We don't need these huge power spikes just yet. Oh, by the way, you can grab a Pyromancer on your way out because, again, I bought so much time and forced so many backs and so much extra resources spent to defend on that left side of the map that now you have that afforded time and luxury to be able to grab extra parts throughout the jungle to do so. Because of that, Athenian Sages have now expanded their lead up towards 7,000, which isn't the worst position to be in as a Valkyrie, but it's not a great spot, at least as of this time frame, because while you do have Tiamat, her first ability can be body block. You can stop that one from hitting the minions. You do have some clear if you throw out the Typhoon with your ultimate to be able to try and clear things out. But if it targets a god, you walk it away. But the Valkyries aren't here for a defense. It doesn't even matter.
Lights out. Xbalanque turns him off for the Athenian Sages. In goes Aquarius on the tier. Lockdown. Left-hand bird falls, but so does Privative. In return, ErupTCrimson picks up one for the Tiamat. Snaddy, Renjaru, Nayhoo all on the retreat. Some lockdown from the Agni and a dash away is going to create the space to allow the Sages to retreat safely. Aquarius not quite done with Jangaru, who is more than happy to take this boxing match. A left-hand bird falls, and I think the Athenian Sages are happy to give up the support for it.
Yeah, unfortunately, they were playing phone tag with each other, and the Valkyries were a little late on the call that time through, and because of it, the Sages are able to take out left Phoenix. Sure, they lose out on Privative. Not the worst person to trade out for a left side Phoenix, which is so important when you do want to set up for the next Fire Giant. It is going to make sure that Aquarius or somebody else is going to be sent to that left side of the map to defend. I say Aquarius because he does have teleport, so it's easy to put him over there, teleport him back in for the fight, and then keep things going a little bit later through. Sage is a little sloppy, at least on the retreat, but I did like that Jangaru separated himself, didn't try and funnel in with his team. But then you also run into the problem for the Valkyries of trying to chase into something like an Agni or into even Snaddy on the horse. Used it defensively to get out, but there's so much potential turn and burn from the Sages. Valkyries recognized they couldn't continue forward.
And the Stygian Beak back on its way. Snaddy knocked up in the air. Gold Fury on the left-hand side. Primal going to be taken down here by the Athenian Sages. Extend that lead even just a little bit further here. And we got a while before the Fire Giant spawns, J-Mac. What do the Valkyries need to do? I mean, we're approaching that point as Jangaru is straight up soloing Sam and puts the opposing jungler in the ground for the next 43 seconds. That was not even difficult from Jangaru. That was filthy.
Yeah, Jangaru said, you know what, the full, like the half damage, half defense build was kind of cool from you, Sam, but what if I just built full damage on the Ravana this time through and just absolutely eviscerate in a 1v1? At that point through, I mean, with the Brawler's Beat Stick, you're not going to get nearly as big of a hill back for Sam because he doesn't elect into a lot of defense. The top end half of his heal, where it's a % of your max HP, is not getting nearly the same values if you would go into a bit more of a defensive option. So Sam just kind of losing out in potential 1v1 there. He used all of his resources on the wave, on the camp there, and Jangaru didn't even make that one easy. And this is part of why I was saying for Sam, I don't want to see a full glass cannon Erlang Shen build. I want to see a little bit more defense. Things like the Arc Druid Stone is really good to get that extra in-hand damage. Get smacked by a couple of abilities through, walk back in, here's a big burst damage on my next auto. Same thing with getting that Dawnbringer, bring to the back line for the extra protections. It makes it so much easier to live throughout team fights as an Erlang Shen, but with Sam going full damage, he doesn't have that defense. He doesn't have that luxury to sustain up against some of these much harder hitting targets. Because let me put it this way, Erlang Shen at 4 items in a 1v1 against the Ravana, we saw what just happened, and that's not because of the lead. That's because of the nature of Erlang Shen. His autos hit harder. When you don't get a chance to throw an auto, you're just going to lose the fight.
And that was a great example of why Ravana has, exploded back. I don't have a more powerful verb, like catapulted back in the meta, especially during this tournament. I mean, first pick, first ban in essentially every single game. As Snaddy is being ran down here, but so tanky, has that horse to leap onto, doesn't care, even a little bit, at all. Pyromancer goes down the way of the Sages. Fire Giant back online. Real lack of wards over on that objective, though. Gonna need to see some vision from both of these squads.
Fire Giant for the Sages. They'll give up the beacon to the Valkyries, and now that the Sages know that the beacon was their goal, they can instead start for fire. A full push by the Valkyries.
Wow.
Over to a left side Phoenix could be big for them. They can delay this game. If they get the Titan spawning, they can keep this game going a little bit faster. Finding a pick on Snaddy would be even better.
Oh, no horse for Snaddy. Sam for Soccer moving forward, taunting Snaddy back in. It's 4 members of the Valkyries shoving damage down Snaddy's throat. Gonna go down, but meanwhile, on the right-hand side, Jangaru solos down the Phoenix. Fire Giant dropping, of course, as well. Left-hand side Phoenix for the Valkyries weekend. And the Valhalla Valkyries can't push anymore in this left-hand lane, so really, you give up a right-hand Phoenix to give up a Fire Giant, and all you get in return is a solo lane Guan Yu that's going to be up in half a minute.
If I'm the Sages here, I probably just push up left, ignore the Titan, maybe send one person to go along with the Titan. Once Snaddy respawns, send him up mid, say, hey, go have fun, let the Titans fight, do their own thing. But you can just push up left here, get those minions up towards the Phoenix. You still got plenty of time on your Fire Giant buff before you have to worry about anything. Grouping up in mid, not the worst idea for the Sages, though in a 5v4, it's going to be a little bit harder, especially if you don't have beads. But luckily for all the Sages carries, they do still have beads, don't have to worry about the tier. The range damage, at least from Wowy, from Crimson, able to deal with the Titan pretty easily. The Sages can do just the same thing. Renjaru even further range, at least on that Hunter, but the Valkyries aren't even going to give an attempt to push up with Titan. It's just they let them clash, take care of them, get that objective off the map, and now reset for a new defense.
And that's really the way we've seen. I mean, there's been 2 approaches so far during the SMITE Masters tournament. It's been push with the Titan and allow it to assist you, act as essentially a 6th member of the team, or just let it go, grab the benefits of that objective and allow your enemy to do the same. And it seems like that's the approach that the Valkyries and the Sages are both taking here, as the Sages are going to take down a Primal Fury in return, elongate this lead to a pretty significant, call it 12K here at 26, taking over to 27 minutes. Fire Giant around the waist of floor for a little bit longer. No Phoenix on the right-hand side for the Valkyries, a weakened Phoenix on the left-hand side. The Valhalla Valkyries going to have to make some kind of defense here if they're looking to continue their streak of 2-0s.
Most important part of that lead, though, is where it's allocated towards. Hunters, you have still pretty much similar build between Renjaru and Wowy. Renjaru hasn't sold the starter yet. Hasn't got much going through. Privative's going to get the ult, start this team fight out.
Privative yoinking in Gamma, who's able to walk the way out of that fight. Snaddy doesn't grab too much with the horsey, and Wowy puts down the solo lane in return. Wowy is online, folks, and dishing out plenty of damage on this Xbalanque. Level 20, got 5 items online. That dude swings. Snaddy going to be in the grayscale for the next 40 seconds. The Sages aren't giving up on this push, though. Renjaru, Priv, and Nayhoo still hanging around this left side. Meanwhile, in the middle lane, Jangaru splitting up the map a little bit here for the Valkyries. Crimson and Sam defending the middle lane Phoenix. The rest of the squad, Gamma, Wowy, and Aquarius grouping up on this left-hand side. Jangaru looking for the initiation around the corner. Nayhoo raining down fire from the sky, dishing out damage. Renjaru just clearing the wave.
The benefit for the Valkyries on this defense is not only just having an extra person to push through, but knowing that the only ultimate online for now is Jangaru's. Now, obviously having a couple of bombs in pocket certainly helped through, but easy initiation for Aqua doing things just like this. Can get through, take relics away from the carry.
Stunning 2 to kick things off. Gamma. No stun to follow up. Snaddy's got a TP online, and Snaddy is back in business here. It's 5 for the Athenian Sages. Moving forward, Snaddy with no hesitation right onto ErupTCrimson on this Tiamat. Phoenix not taking damage so far as Gamma is dropping low. Renjaru finds the first kill of the engagement. Aquarius dropping low to the Mystic Rush. Snaddy in the backline grabs a 2-man stun. Crimson forced out. Wowy still chucking out those bolas. Able to repel the Athenian Sages, but not before losing the Firebird on the left side.
Benefit of that Soul Surge dropping in the middle is all of that extra movement speed afforded to Snaddy and company, being able to just run right to the backline and then immediately use it to disengage after they get the Phoenix. And that's all that the Sages needed with this final little bit of the Fire Giant, was grab that left side Phoenix, make this next Fire Giant a bit easier, The right side Phoenix has respawned, but weakened and will have to be dealt with at least this final fire wave. The Athenian Sages are playing this patiently. The problem is that once we start cresting this 30, 35-minute mark, this 12,000 gold lead that they had starts meaning less and less. The mid laners are both fully online. The hunters are both finishing up their build once Wowy gets his final item online, which I do believe he's on the way to, but still lacking at least just a little bit. No executioner for him compared to Renjaru on the other side. So some of that gold allocation mattering just a little bit less. But what I'm really liking out of both of these teams, and it's something that we don't see as often at the SCC, you don't see it as much, at least in your casual or your ranked games either, is the counter building more than anything else. What happens when Frostbound got built by Sam? It's answered by a Wingblade from Privative. What happens when Privative goes in and Gamma has no way of cleansing CC immunity? He finds not only one, but two ways to deal with it. He can either wait for the Magi's to be available, or if it gets taken like this, his second option is this Absolution picked up. What happens? Throw up your ultimate. Now you get 1 second of CC immunity for you and all of your allies around you when that's popped. More often than not, Gamma's always standing by his allies and it all comes through.
Fire Giant. It's past 30 minutes. We got an enhanced one on the board. J-Mac. Athenian Sages are going to start it up. Gamma, Wowy, and the rest of the squad. Aquarius on the left-hand lane. No doubt teleporting in. Sam for Soccer wrapping around the back, but Gamma dropping low. All ready to kick things off. Privative slowing it down. No escape in. Gamma yanked back in, and Nayhoo with a bomb from downtown takes out the support. Privative of half HP. A huge leap in. A Lawbringer over the top. Wowy finds one. Sam finds another. Nayhoo returns it right back around on the jungler. Wowy ripping through the Athenian Sages. A 3 for 2, and the Valhalla Valkyries are not giving up their final breath.
That should have been a much cleaner win for the Valhalla Valkyries, but the one thing Nayhoo does before going down is dashing through 3 different people. That trail of flames left behind has left so much damage, throwing it back towards Sam, applies the Divine Rune, keeps that heal from being as big as it was, mitigates what Gamma's ultimate was doing for the team, and really puts a lot of damage back in the Valks. Sure, Nayhoo dies, but without that dash damage, without the return fire that he had thrown through in that fight, that could have gone so much worse for the Sages. But maybe the most questionable part about all of that was you landed the change, you got the fire, you got the slow on Gamma, if you're Privative in this case, but then he solo ults Gamma. I think what he was trying to do was catch ErupTCrimson through the wall and maybe get a beads or an ultimate from him there, but was only able to grab Gamma. Gamma's a little late on the ultimate from going through, or maybe a bit early from that Absolution of being able to try and save him there. But he was able to buy so many resources for his team because he takes a solo ultimate, because he takes a solo horrific emblem. None of that is available for the team fight after.
And just a massive Lawbringer over the top. I mean, locking down multiple members of the Athenian Sages and allowing the rest of the Valhalla Valkyries to follow up. Snaddy and Privative moving back into this Fire Giant pit now. Wards peppering the pit and around the map. Vision is key here in Smite. Snaddy leading the charge with Privative. It's 32 minutes. We had a 50-minute banger last game, J-Mac, and it looks to be stretching this one out as well. The gold lead becomes less and less important as items are online. Level 20s getting hit across the board. Only Gamma has a little bit more XP to go before hitting that final penultimate mark. And the Athenian Sages trying to bring it to a game number 3, not only in this set, but the first game 3 here at Smite Masters.
Yeah, game number 3 on the final set of the day would definitely be a great one to watch for an elimination game at that. Athenian Sages and the Valkyries fighting for their last chance to keep alive in this tournament. And we'll still have to do another elimination match after, even if you do win up against the Wargs. So it's such cautious play by both teams. This Fire Giant is melting at the hands of the Sages.
It's Sam on the left side and it's Jangaru on the right side. Both junglers playing the flank as Fire Giant is falling low. Might be a coin flip to secure the objective. Privative leading the charge in the back line. The Sages take down the Fire Giant. Jangaru finds Crimson, and Nayhoo is going to drop to Sam for Soccer, who is shredding through the mid lane. Agni, Gamma, and Wowy getting ran down by the Ravana. Gamma is only seconds away from death. It's going to be the ADC Renjaru to pick up the Terra. Nayhoo falls, but in return, 3 fall for the Valhalla Valkyries. A Fire Giant go the way of the Athenian Sages, and the map is wide open for the Order team to march down.
Aquarius is going to try to go back to base, but try being the operative word there. Privative is just going to keep chasing him through and not give him a moment to freely back. Even if he has an ultimate, still don't have a great target to go through, so this is just Privative buying time for the rest of his team to walk up and even potentially in the game unless Sam for Soccer can stop him. Privative just stops Aquarius again. the Athenian Sages are just going for the end.
And Sam Jangaru boxing, we've seen this one once before and it didn't go the way of Sam. Snaddy and Renjaru shoving into the Titan room. Jangaru takes down Sam. And J-Mac, we got a game 3.
Game 3 on our final set of day number 2. Elimination on the line, and both these teams pulling out all the stops to win this one through. Again, late game, you can't focus so much on killing an Agni. You can't spend that many bodies and resources to try and kill one person every single time. Nayhoo dies, he pulls Sam for Sakura that fight, but because Sam has gone to the backline trying to deal with Nayhoo, he's now left his own teammates far behind. He's left Wowy out of position. He's left the rest of his squad trying to deal with Jangaru, who is just running through the backline in this Ravana, through Snaddy, who is just cavalry charging to the back and dealing with everybody there. I'll be honest, I wasn't a big fan of the Sam build early game. Late game, it did a little bit more, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more defense in there. And all honesty, the Frostbound felt like it got really zero value in that entire game.
Are you chucking this up to composition issues, the Erlang Shen, maybe a little bit of the Tiamat? I mean, the rest of the comp is pretty solid. Or are you putting this /Mork in the way the Athenian Sages just playing it out?
I think the Athenian Sages maybe just won only the draft because of the Ares. I'm not saying that you just have to ban the Ares and that exact same comp works,
Sure.
but the Ares certainly made that a little bit easier for the Athenian Sages, and I think the counterplay throughout the game and the positioning of the Sages really helped them elevate that win a little bit easier.
We got a game 3 here in North America. The Valkyries and the Sages go the full distance. Stick around for game number 3. Coming at you in just a minute.
Well, it finally happened here. We have a Game 3 on the horizon. Tie set after the Sages have a fantastic Game 2. And Alpha Jackal, sometimes it comes down to very simply one really good counter pick and maybe something else that goes along on the other side. But the Ares, I think, stands out. There were several fights at the very beginning where you said, wow, you won that just because you happen to be Ares. Like, that's it. You walk forward, you were Ares, you win.
Yeah, there was one fight where I believe there was just about to be level 12 on the Erlang Shen, didn't have the beads up, pulls 2 people on the tower, gets 2 kills there.
Yeah.
The rotation from Aquarius on the tier, he gets chained up, he dies as well. So 3 kills attributed just because of the Ares. I mean, Privative definitely on that Godslayer energy grind because he was fragging all over the place this game.
I mean, it looked good. It set up so many kills for his team and made things, I think, just a lot easier for the Sages in general. And very similar, I think, to what J-Mac was saying towards the end of it. Is it, you know, if you ban the Ares, it doesn't necessarily make this game a win. Makes it a lot easier for you, though. Or, in this instance, if you're just not picking things that are really, really bad into Ares, that then prompts it. We also talked a little bit about the jungle. I think we got to see a lot more out of the Ravana, admittedly, than I was kind of expecting.
Yep.
Had a phenomenal game. And the Erlang didn't quite click the way that you would expect for a god that's been banned quite a few times this week.
No, we've been sort of building up to a point where he was going to get picked for the first time this tournament after being banned so long, and it's still all that suspense of going, oh my god, we finally get to see what this pick does, and nothing in this game. Granted, he did come against probably one of the worst counter picks you can have in Smite, the Erlang Shen into the Ares, so, you know, maybe you chalk it up to that, but this is a time where you have to reevaluate is this god a top pick, top ban?
Well, after that, I guess we'll see. 5, 7, and 5, not the end of the world, but definitely maybe not as shining as the 7, 0, and 6 on the other side. And Crimson finally dies today. 2, 2, and
Twice.
5. Yeah, 5. So they made up for at least one of the other games. Now, I guess the question is, you know, if you're the Sages here, you found some success. Your bans were, you know, the Thor, which makes sense. We saw what Sam was able to do on that earlier. You got the Maui out of there as well. They should still probably ban Janus, right? Like you get that kind of performance versus what we've been seeing otherwise is a huge deal.
Oh yeah, you still ban away in the Janus. You still have to respect what he managed to do in the 3 games where he was given it today and just say, yeah, you're still not having it. We did beat you, but you're still not having it because we're not sure whether in a do-or-die situation we can get this win against you. If there was a best of 5 and it was still they still had 1 game to lose and they could still play and win the set, maybe they don't ban it. But in a do-or-die situation, you still get rid of it.
Yeah, do or die. That's the best way to describe this. Game 3, loser goes home. Winner at least gets to play tomorrow for their right to try and continue in this tournament. Valkyries will be first pick this time. Sages over on the right-hand side. And the Janus will be banned a second time here by the Sages. Serket. And now alongside the Marty, banned out by the Valkyries.
We haven't seen too much Marty this tournament, so to see it banned up this high up, I'm gathering that the Valkyries and the Sages being on opposite sides of the bracket to each other, that they would have started to maybe, scrim to each other a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is probably a pick that came up in scrims a lot and just performed very well.
Yeah, he's actually, well, until this game, he was right at the 50%. Like, he's been banned a lot, picked twice. It's just nothing too crazy. And so we'll see, maybe eventually, what he has to offer. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe never. Maybe he's just banned.
He's just gone forever.
But he is banned alongside now the Ravana, who, again, last game just had a phenomenal performance. And looked incredible there for the Sages. Hachi banned out by the Sages. And so, right now, front lines, probably feeling pretty good. Terra's definitely been very high up on the list. Yamoja, Baba Yaga as well, very notably available right now.
And still
with
available.
Thor, yeah, this is one of the first games in a while that she's actually been let through.
Probably a first pick right here for the Valhalla Valkyries. Certainly wouldn't be out of the question. I mean, has performed very well every single time we've seen it. Is one of the more difficult mid lane mages to deal with. In fact, I think the most difficult mid lane mage to deal with in this current meta, given that she builds into into the cloak, it just becomes almost unkillable because of the extra protections that she has. So Valhalla Valkyries, they're still deliberating on it, but I wouldn't put it past it to pick up either the Emoja or in the Baba Yaga.
Definitely a lot of options. I can imagine that's the conversation. Frontline or mid? Like, which one of you feels maybe a little stronger here? Now, Wowy, otherwise, has most of the time been able to get his carry pick here, but it's been Hachi, right? Someone who hovers above all else. I'm going to be honest, I would have gone down pretty far in the Guardian tab, at least 3 in the Guardian tab before I hit Maui. And to pick him over the others, I'm wondering, I just saw that lean back from Gamma, and I'm wondering, maybe I'm reading into the body language too much, but I also would react that way if I saw a Baba Yaga locked in after logging in the Maui. Do you think that what he brings, I'm a big Maui fan, but over a Baba Yaga, is that first pick worthy?
Not in this meta. I think you go back to Worlds 100%, you continue after Worlds in the first few patches afterwards, you still say Maui, Maui, Maui. This patch in particular, Baba Yaga, I think, sits above the Maui in the pecking order. The Kali, maybe a little bit early, a pick up here from the Sages. I would have liked to have seen that third pick, but you can't go wrong against a god that has a 100% win rate at this tournament so far.
Yeah, when you're winning that much, you're not going to hear any arguments from me. You've just played well. And like you said, maybe a little early. Give some opportunities for the Sages to try and figure out ways to handle it. Sorry, for the Valkyries to try and figure out ways to handle it. They're locking in Achilles, and that one's real, and they're going to lock in the Thoth, so that's something that I'm going to be honest with you, haven't seen in a while. When we have seen it, it's been all right, but he's not been this standout go-to god lately.
No, we sometimes hear rumblings when we're hanging out with the players about gods that might be being picked up that are potentially good. If you're hanging out with a person like Zeros occasionally, you think, okay, you'll hear a lot about it. Zero talk about Thoth, so I'm thinking going into this tournament, no chance of even being picked up at all. But in the end, we do see it picked up here. His extra range and able to deal with, the threat that a Baba Yaga brings. He can dash away from the Kali and actually stay safe from the Kali at that point as well. The extra penetration he gets from his passive will help him destroy those tanks a little bit more easily. But I'm just worried about his overall safety if he gets caught out without his dash.
Yeah, definitely a lot of things that can be troublesome for a Thoth, and you've got a silence, a very contingent silence, but a silence nonetheless on the other side that could cause some trouble for you, plus the stun, the jump, a lot of lockdown from Akali. Valkyries. Where do you think the Achilles goes? Aquarius has played this and played it really well, but we've seen it flexed in the jungle earlier. Do you think it has a home against the Kali, or do you think it's better if you throw that off into the solo lane?
I think you kind of have to throw it off into the solo lane at this point. I mean, Aquarius plays it very well in the solo lane, so I don't really want to take him off a pick that is strong for him. But if you get the opportunity to pick up a tier or a King Arthur in the tier versus King Arthur matchup, I think you have to lean into that, put the Achilles into the jungle, just leave it as a flex pick for now. Have a discussion about who wants it more as the bans go on.
Well, Sages still seem to be on the same line, right? Where it's probably an Aquarius pick, given what we've seen out of the history. Fenrir ban that comes through. Terra, by the way, rounds out their top 3, which is a frightening top 3. Baba Yaga, Kali, and Terra.
Is there an F6 button that you can do already?
Do what?
An F6 button that you can do already as a team? This would be the time in the lobby that I would do so in ranked.
Yeah, you probably could, but I don't know that they want to. Like you said, I'm going to steal what you said earlier. If this was a best of 5, maybe you do just hit it and hit the reset button, but no. You're locked in for this one. Fenrir, Ram banned out by the Sages, Tyr, and Odin banned out by the Valkyries. So the Sages still looking for 1 frontline, 1 carry. Valkyries still looking for probably jungle and carry, but flex potential still standing. Xbalanque gets locked in. He's kind of been in that conversation for, I guess, 3rd on the list behind the Hachi and the Ram. And I'm just going to tell you, Sages, I like that draft. It's just looking really good.
It screams team fight. It screams we get to 25 minutes. We win by default with the Kali and the Xbalanque. The Baba Yaga as well becomes just unkillable. I'm really liking the draft, like you mentioned. It's going to take some serious doing from the Valhalla Valkyries to turn this around. The Hombats could be the key to that. Just big AoE CC ultimates that can hit 4 or 5 people, really disrupt the team fight. And maybe that's exactly what they need.
They've got that. Maybe some CC coming from the Ishtar. Range CC. Plus Maui. I mean, if you're looking for, hey, let's get as much setup, let's burn relics so that Thoth can hit shots from the backline, this feels like it. And so maybe some pressure on Crimson, but that feels very similar. I mean, you go back to every game except for the last one, and Crimson is playing in the back, getting a lot of good damage out there, good snipes, things like that. Put him on Tiamat, doesn't have the same effect. Put him on Thoth, and while it's definitely still very different from Janus, one thing that you can at least draw is high damage, long distance abilities, and a pretty big snipe, maybe not global, but still a big one on his ultimate. Guan Yu locked in for the Sages. So it feels like if you're looking at pure tier list, Kali maybe is someone that this week is on the rise, and like you said, when you have a 100% win rate, not going to argue against it. Everybody else in there is pretty much running the tier list considering the gods that have been banned. Valkyries are playing something that feels more like it's their gods, though.
Yeah, you're going with pure feel versus pure stats here in terms of brain versus brawn, which will come out on top. And for me, I just can't look past that Athenian Sages draft and go, I see that losing. I just can't say it. That draft is ridiculous on paper to the point where you have to win the early game against it, but can you win the early game against it with the draft that the Valhalla Valkyries have got? I'm not sure. Thoth takes a lot of time to ramp up. Hombats, your ultimate's on a 2-minute cooldown, so you need to rush into that cooldown reduction. You're not really as effective until you hit level 9, level 10. Ishtar, great early game pick, but with the reduction of crit, becomes a little less more effective in the team fights. It seems like it's all going to hinge on just how effective this Maui ultimate is in separating these fights.
It's a lot of pressure on Gamma. I look, and if you're grabbing Maui, and not only grabbing Maui, but first picking Maui over the Baba Yaga, over the Terra, the Yamoja even, you got to make sure that it has, I guess, the proof that it deserves to be up there. So some pressure here for Gamma to make this work out. And of course, I think to shake things up for him, it is difficult, and I have to look towards frontline presence, not just, you had mentioned the Maui, the Terra. I think Achilles and Guan Yu we have to talk about. Aquarius has had some really good Achilles performances, and that execute should be pretty helpful throughout this game, but at the same time, Guan Yu has been more prevalent, at least throughout this year, and definitely I think even this tournament, that in general it feels like that has a slight edge.
Yeah, I think that the execute from the Achilles will come up big in this whole team fight scenario, whether it's onto the Guan Yu, whether it's onto the Terra, or whether it's onto the Kali before that destruction ultimate comes off. But in the times we have seen Kali struggle this weekend, it's been against compositions that have had high CC capability onto a single target. This composition for the Valkyries does not scream that to me. It has some limited medium CC with some roots, maybe 1 or 2 stuns, a grab, but you're not really stopping the Kali from activating that destruction. There's 1 or 2 abilities across the entire team that are doing that.
And when you look at it, and much like you just highlighted, a lot of those are going to be tied to ultimates as well. Like if you're trying to get the lockdown, it might be a little rough here for the Valkyries. It is do or die Valkyries Sages Game 3. Dimes, J-Mac, take it away.
Well, how about it, J-Mac? We get the absolute pleasure of bringing a game number 3 to the masses here at SMITE Masters, the first of the weekend. It's Dimes, it's J-Mac, it's Doug bringing you game number 3 of the Valhalla Valkyries and the Athenian Sages. It is win or go home, J-Mac.
Yeah, I think a very important part that this brought up is the compositional change here for the Valkyries that does work really well against what the Sages want to do, but needs to be a bit earlier. And we're going to talk about maybe a swing of the Twitch poll was sitting at, what, 70, 80+% the last 2 games. Now nearly dead even at that 50-50. I think they're right to put some faith back over to the Athenian Sages because, as mentioned, Jangaru on this Kali, once late game goes through, it's going to be so difficult to stop this Destruction Ultimate from going through. You have maybe a stun from Aquarius. You have maybe a stun from Gamma, but then other than that, you're banking on ultimates to be able to stop that one goes through. So you have to hope that your CC chain is just long enough. You have just enough of that CC and kit to stop Jangaru from getting that ult through. Has already elected to go in early beads because you are up against something like a Hun Batz. So as long as Jangaru can make it through, I would say the first 20, 25 minutes of this game, the Athenian Sages have a pocket late game hyper carry in this Kali. It's just going to be mostly, at least on the onus of the Valhalla Valkyries to get active in this early game.
And then, of course, you can't ignore the rest of the Athenian Sages because around that same exact time, 25 minutes, Nayhoo is going to be one-tapping you with Home Sweet Home, right? Chucking out those potions. Renjaru on this Xbalanque, once known as probably the best late-game hunter in the game, still swings like crazy. But on the other side, the Valhalla Valkyries, I mean, Crimson, with these final judgments, ripping through team fights, is going to be able to one-shot people. Wowie's going to be swinging on this Ishtar, and Sam for Soccer on this Hun Batz. You got damage, you got initiation, you got displacement with the Fear No Evil. I'm loving this pickup for the jungler.
And I think kind of going back to the Xbalanque, and more than anything, just gods in general that give you more damage across the board see so much value in this current meta because items themselves have been nerfed across the board. You get 30% less damage from your itemization. Xbalanque's passive didn't get touched. Gods like Scylla getting 100 free power from her passive didn't get touched. So when you get these gods that can just continue amplifying flat damage more than anything, because percent damage with someone like Discordia, that's not going to scale as hard as something more like just getting 30 flat damage from a Xbalanque. So when everybody is getting 40, 50 less power in the build, Xbalanque is benefiting that much more from it. So I love seeing the emergent Xbalanque in this current meta. Don't know how much he'll be a top pick, top ban, but it's certainly showing that there is still some light for this character.
Dude, you mentioned the Scylla. Every time I've brought Scylla up to a pro or anybody really, I get clowned on for suggesting that pick, which me getting clowned on, what's really news here. Is Jangaru rotating on this left-hand side, Snaddy and Aquarius going at it as well. Kali deciding not to go in. Smart considering, well, it's level 3, it's Kali. You've got really nothing on your side. Sam for Soccer stepping up in this middle-hand lane, but Jangaru full HP. Crimson able to step back under the tier 1 tower. And so much safety here for Crimson. I mean, you have a long-range dash, you've got long-range clear, you've got a long-range ultimate. Crimson, it's almost like Janus light, right?
Some action over in the dual lane. Slows through. Stun from Gamma to potentially set up her first blood. They need a little bit more.
A couple more shots out of Wowy, already using that backflip aggressively. Doesn't have it in the tank. Privative able to backstep out of danger there. Gamma, Wowy certainly have the aggression, have the advantage in this dual lane to kick things off, but you know what happens early game, J-Mac? When one dual lane finds an advantage, the jungler makes sure that advantage disappears like dust.
And at least for both of these junglers, until level 5 hits, you're probably not seeing Kali get active. She only has one form of CC, that immediate, really close range stun. Hun Batz only has a slow and has to use his jump in order to get that. So until Fear No Evil's online, I don't imagine Sam is going to try and get active if he needs to step up to, say, a blue buff to make sure it doesn't get stolen, or a red buff just to contest and fight. He'll do so, but he's not going to try and really start fights out. Same with Jangaru. Doesn't really want to use that ultimate unless it's absolutely necessary for either a chase under tower or just to live from potential CC or kill that might eventually come his way through there. So I don't imagine we'll see too much action out of the junglers, but again, the Valhalla Valkyries want to be a little bit more aggressive early. They want to try and find these early leads because you get to late game. Nayhoo's going to be tanky, having that prophetic cloak with the Baba Yaga. We've seen it pretty much all season long and hasn't even been up until just a new emergence from this one. This has been something that Baba Yaga's built for the last 3-4 weeks that Baba has been meta, at least at the top level of play. Jangaru is, again, late game hyper carry in the Kali. Renjaru is going to do a lot of damage as well. So late game is very scary for the Athenian Sages. But the Valkyries do have tools to answer back late game, namely in Sam. Crimson can do an immense amount of damage on this Thoth as well.
Level 5, here we go. Fear No Evil, no beads for Privative. Locked down, a great CC chain. For the Valkyries, a slow comes out for Sam with that Leap Monkey off the mark. No overhand smash follow-up as it was already used, and Privative once again escapes danger. as Sam, I mean, that was probably Sam's best target in the, whoa, there come the Sunny Swords ripping through Privative. Very nearly takes down the Terra, but once again, Privative escaping by the skin of his teeth.
Must have just been because Wowy didn't have access to ultimate going into that team fight, so he didn't have an opportunity to get that stun, but it would have been so much nicer to have that 5 seconds before to try and lock down Privative and guarantee that kill while Sam was sticking around, but an attempt nonetheless to grab him through. Gamma a little bit late on hitting 5 as well, didn't have access to Landfall to try and follow up on that kill, so instead, Privative able to slip through the noose that time and make his way back to base, keep himself alive, and really keep the hopes of the Sages up as well, because duo lane has been where so much of the action has broken out for these two teams. We saw it so much last time for Sam for Soccer on the Erlang Shen in Game 2. Now seeing that repeated here. And again, it's the second that level 5 is there, the second that Sam has access to that ultimate, trying to get active early. It's the name of the game for Sam and the Valkyries in this game.
And Jotun's Wrath, the first pickup here for Sam, so expect Sam to be an ult bot, just running around, dropping Fear No Evils just about anywhere. It's going to be tough on Snaddy, right? You got the CC immunity, same thing with Nayhoo. Run up into that home sweet home, so wouldn't be surprised if duo lane is where most of the action continues to be placed.
I think that's probably where the best pressure is going to be for really either of these teams. As long as Snaddy has ultimate, he is not concerned about what Sam for Soccer can do with Fear No Evil. You hear the blink or the jump into lane, you jump on the horse, you run away. There's no Hun Bats catching a Guan you at that point. Mid lane, it's so hard to gank Nayhoo on this Baba Yaga, even early, because jumping to home sweet home, now you've immune the CC, you get the knockback, and now Sam has no way to close gap initially beyond there, unless he saved Leap or Blink at that point through. So his best targets right now are in the dual lane, and with how much pressure Wowy and Gamma has afforded to him, can allow him to make those kinds of rotations through. But we need to see success come from these ultimates. We need to see relics taken away. We need to see maybe a kill or two potentially through there. Last time, rotates over, he gets the horrific off of Privative. Might have been the only reason that Privative lives during that fight. But you need to go for a little bit more. Privative's got Gauntlet of Thieves online now. While not tanky immediately, just getting HP and small bits of protections as it starts to stack up, those stacks are going to start coming through, and it's going to be that much harder to kill a Terra.
Smite fans, settle in for a calculated game of Smite here in this best of 3. It's game number 3 of day 2. Smite Summer Masters, the Sages, and the Valkyries. Neither one of these teams are ready to hang up the controllers, the mouse and keyboard. Neither one of these teams want to go home. In goes Aquarius, back under tower. Lights go out from the Xbalanque. Jangaru's made the rotation to this right-hand side, but Aquarius pretty safe here under tower. Snaddy box off as well. And we got a moment to breathe here. J-Mac, is it going to be, we've talked about, Jangaru looking to get a couple items online. Same thing goes for Nayhoo and Crimson and pretty much everyone on this map. Are we going to see huge engagements over things like Beacons and Gold Furies, or is it going to be one team really allowing the other team to maybe, okay, you take this objective, we're going to counter with an objective across the map just to avoid team fighting?
Valkyries definitely have some of the better Beacon fights through the early game. Fear No Evil, you cut off an entire corridor, sets up for Crimson to throw out that final judgment as well, even just long-range damage. You even have things like Landfall to completely close off an escape path there. So I don't imagine we see Sages put up too much of a fight around Beacon unless they already have the man advantage at that point. So likely the Sages would try and find for a pick before going towards Beacon or one of these objectives, because otherwise there's so much AoE control that the Valkyries have comparatively with, again, the Fear No Evil, the Landfall, just those two. And then even with Wowy's ultimate as well, just that conal stun that you can throw out there makes it so threatening to fight inside the jungle and around these tight corridors.
Something we've seen a lot here, JMAC, in 10.6, are supports hanging around the dual lane a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Like, not a ton of rotation. Gamma gets a pull in on Renjaru, locked down from the sun dropping out of Wowy there. This Privative and Renjaru able to back up in this duo lane. But, I mean, Gamma and Privative are essentially just babysitting their ADCs. The mid laners are left on their island. Same thing goes for solo. Do you think that continues as we head into deeper days into Smite Masters? Do you think that's a character the SCC is? Jangaru is going to be the target here, but an easy leap away. A follow-up from Sam for Soccer, slowed down. Only auto attacks for follow-up there. There's the overhand smash. Jangaru forced into that destruction ultimate just to ensure that the colleague continues to live, and still goose eggs across the board here, 8.5 in.
Dangerous waters there for Jangaru, going in so deep into enemy territory to try and steal away that blue buff, but being able to do so, at least a big impact on keeping some farm away. But to answer your question, I imagine we'll probably see a lot of that towards the tail end of the regular season for SPL and even SCC. We've already seen the support stick around towards that 7 or 8 level. Don't imagine much of that changes, especially with how little there really is to do on the map until those beacons spawn back through, with how important the neutral farm is. Those shield buffs, those cooldown buffs are so important to grab because they're worth more than going for your normal buffs at this point. I think having these supports stick around there, let your carries get online, start getting their stacks, start getting your stacks, more importantly, on things like Gauntlet of Thieves, because of how wide open the map is towards the mid. It's a little bit harder for the supports to get farm over there.
Jangaru making the rotation over here onto the dual lane, takes down the purple buff, strips it away under Wowy's nose there. Unfortunate loss for the Ishtar in the dual lane, but something that Wowy will certainly be able to recover from. Jangaru splitting this shield buff here now on the left-hand side, and it's even across the map. I mean, dang near dead even. We got a tiny lead for Aquarius, a tiny lead for Privative, but otherwise gold experience as we take over to the 10-minute mark here. J-Mac, both of these teams playing it nice and easy on Elimination Friday.
In Game 3s, you're going to see that Jangaru no bees. Should be an easy pick. What?
Down.
Gets out? No!
Landfall comes on through, takes down Jangaru for the first kill of the game. Sam for Soccer gets out scot-free as well. And you put the first one on Gamma.
Not the worst target to give it over to. Making sure to keep up your pressure and really escalate Gamma's build, because what I imagine he's going for has got to be this Relic Dagger, specifically the Bewitched Relic Dagger, giving that pseudo old Witchblade effect, reducing attack speed of the players around him, and with two very crucial targets to have something like that, specifically Jangaru running through the backline, which is where Gamma is going to be more often than not standing by Wowy, by Crimson. Reducing that attack speed on the Kali effectively kills so much of Kali's damage, because Kali, she's not an ability god. She's got an ability that deals damage, but she's not ability focused. She is strictly for those auto attacks. Get that chainsaw revving once you get things like the kin size online, get that Odysseus bow. Slowing that down is the most important thing that Gamma can do for the team.
Gamma grabbing Privative with that fishing hook. That was a good catch by Wowy. Privative under tower, taking tower shots. Wowy with the lockdown, takes about half of the support's HP. Not a ton of follow-up though, but just good heads-up smite play there out of the ADC for the Valhalla Valkyries. So ErupTCrimson looking pretty good so far in games 1, 2, 3, 4. Back on the Thoth. Janus light snipes down the way. Could be big play potential here as we move into the mid-game.
Gamma getting some ward coverage up at purple just to keep eyes on what Renjaru and even Privative are doing, for how long the supports are sticking around. I'm actually surprised they're still here over in left lane when the beacon is just 20 seconds away from spawn in. Would have thought we'd see more movement over that direction, but as I said, the Sages don't really have a great fight at the beacon. As long as Sam for Soccer is standing around, that should be more than guaranteed for the Valkyries to be able to grab that beacon, unless the Sages find a pick either onto him or onto Crimson, or force one of those players back to base before it spawns through. So probably at least for this first, maybe even second beacon, Valkyries should be able to grab that one with little to no contest, especially with how many bodies they can expend to do so and how much area they just control. Being able to find a pick on a Priv would be even better for the Valks.
Oh, once again, it's deja vu. Privative lockdown. Gamma going in onto Nayhoo, who's up into that home sweet home, chucking out some of those fire bolts. So ErupTCrimson falls down to about half HP. Jangaru is the new target. Aquarius off the mark, but rotating once again from the solo lane, picks up the support. And the Valhalla Valkyries grab the first Stygian beacon of this game, along with a kill.
And that's all you need from Crimson in the early game. Slam those ultimates. They're not going to hit for 700, 800, even 1 point whatever K late game at this point.
Disgusting.
But all they need to do is hit for a couple hundred, especially on these supports who are falling low. Privative steps a little bit too far forward, gets hit by the full CC chain that the Valkyries have afforded to him at the time. Between hook on Gamma, the dash was actually completely avoided out by juking over to the side. But as long as Crimson hits that ultimate, keeps those shots going through, even if it's just to the frontliners, it puts a little bit more fear into the Sages, makes it a little bit harder to commit through. Aquarius then teleporting in just makes it a little bit easier. He gets a kill. Sure, he misses the execute, but he was only an auto away from being able to find the kill anyway, so make sure to close that gap, get the kill, and get that first beacon online for the Valkyries, which will get them that global movement speed. Everybody afforded 1% more movement speed on their first stack of it. Every single stack gives you a little bit more, plus the extra damage to structures, and then the Titans, whenever they do unleash and start charging down those lanes.
J-Mac, if you're the Valkyries, you got a couple kills under your belt, you grab a beacon, cool, up a couple K gold. I mean, you're feeling nice, but the Athenian Sages, you called it. They're not waiting for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. They're pushing for 25 minutes here, and as long as they're keeping it within, 5K gold, they're feeling fine going into the mid-game.
5K down at 25 isn't the end of the world for the Sages, as long as that 5K isn't primarily on Jangaru being behind.
Sure,
I think he's the one that needs to be as close to even as you go with the late game. You could be a little far behind, but
might
it
have been a
doesn't.
little bit aggressive. Let's call it like 2K.
Yeah, no, I mean 5K is still fine. If it's like primarily like 1.5 to 2 on a single person, depending on who that one person ahead is, could be hard to come back for the Sages, but being 5,000 down 2,500 with some of the comebacks that are in there between the bounties, the chest camps that are in there, the neutral farm all being buffed back up, Sages still have a way back in, especially once we start cresting 30, 35 minutes like the first 2 games have. Gold starts meaning a lot less at that point. Once your mid laners have full build, you're just waiting for potions, you're waiting for elixirs, you're upgrading your relics at that point. Same with your hunters. You're selling your starter and then buying a new 6th item late game as opposed to upgrading the starter. That's become kind of the common trend again as you get this Death's Toll to begin. Once you get to your 5th full item, you go ahead and you sell that and you buy a new one out there. It's kind of the new trend that the hunters are going back towards at this point. So I think there's still plenty of comeback potential for the Sages, should they be down a little bit late. But you definitely don't want to have to fight in a 5K deficit. You don't want to have to fight anything more than, I'd say, probably a 2 to 3K up against the Valkyries, just because of how good the short amount of CC that they do have is. All it takes is that one chain and that one lack of beats, specifically most likely for Privative, to really be able to capitalize off of it.
Privative, the target of Sam for Soccer, who's got Ultimate online, got Blink online. I mean, any moment that Sam has ult up, or even Blink up, is a moment that Ultimate could be on cooldown, right? You could be looking for some aggression across the map. Pyromancer is online as well. Could be easy pickings for either of these teams should the opportunity present itself. Kali finished off the chin size, got the Golden Blade there, working on some more attack speed, and we're getting to the point where the Kali's going to start ripping through some of these Valkyries' targets.
Already working on what I imagine is going to be the serrated edge, because it's going to give him a little bit of extra pen, a lot of extra damage as well, some lifesteal thrown into the build there, which is always going to be nice for a Kali to have that extra little bit of damage, especially because you use so much of your kit to get in towards these fights. Means you're going to get a nice little extra boost of usage from the passive there for Jangaru. Would like to see a little bit more attack speed in the build as well. Odysseus Bow has become a very common, maybe 3rd, 4th item for the Kali. It really lets him, especially if he can get into the midst of a team fight, pop that ultimate, and just start swinging away, get so many Odysseus Bow procs through the backline there. But essentially as a Kali, you've gotten your first couple of core items on, you've got your clear, now with the Golden Blade, you've got your damage against the tanks and the kin size, and now you just need that final little bit of ramp-up damage to be able to start shredding through these carries.
A bit of a micro thing here, J-Mac, but Snaddy on this Guan Yu has teleport down for another 40 seconds, and I think we've seen Aquarius more than any other solo laner here at SMITE Masters make those early rotations, make an impact around the beacon and the Gold Fury. Teleport online here for the Achilles, so it could be a rotation out of Aquarius, opening the door or making an uneven fight for the Valhalla Valkyries while Snaddy just has to hoof it across the map. So keep your eye on that teleport active for Snaddy, and especially Aquarius, making a rotation to a potential Gold Fury here. Sam for Soccer, Gamma, the middle laner ErupTCrimson, all grouping up around that objective. It's Renjaru and Privative once again in this left-hand lane. I mean, it's tough to catch Privative. You got the bubble online. Tough to catch Renjaru. Sam for Soccer's kind of in a tough spot right now.
Yeah, but the good news for Snaddy is 40 seconds at this point in the game is quite a long time, or quite a short time, I should say, for anything to really be done. I mean, by the time we're even now discussing it, the teleport is back up for Snaddy. He was able to clear out a wave and immediately start making his way to the left side of the map, end up proxy farming right behind the tier 1 tower. But sometimes you don't even need the Gold Fury. You can just go for things like a Pyromancer. If you don't think that your fight around gold is worth it, in this case, you're not out securing a Thoth. You have a Baba Yaga and you have a Xbalanque. You're not really going to be doing a whole lot of damage there. So trade out, get a Pyromancer for yourself. Probably the best call the Sages could make. Give up this Gold Fury. Sure, it's going to hurt your pocket a little bit more. It's going to put you down a little bit of extra gold, but you will have that Runic Bomb used for later.
Here we go. Privative with no bubble, able to be CC'd by Sam. A backflip locking down Privative from Wowy. Privative surviving, but here comes Crimson ripping through with the final judgment. Jangaru juggled in the air, and ErupTCrimson finds a second on the Thoth. 2-0-1. You do not want to get this mid laner hot.
Gamma just barely, I mean, pixels away from Renjaru being able to escape, but that landfall catches him right on the edge of the ankle. Renjaru gets yanked back through and set up for an easy double kill for Crimson. That's why this Thoth is so potent. So much range damage, but also the ability to close that gap or create a gap if need be. Immediately able to dash right back in, quick fires the ultimate, doesn't need a charge to get a kill on the Priv, happens to clip Renjaru at the same time, which is why that fight is afforded then to the Valkyries to keep pushing it forward. And they decide, okay, well, if you're going to give up Pyro, and we know you needed at least 2 people on that side of the map to get that Pyro, Jangaru's not soloing it, Snaddy's not soloing it, so now we have a 5-man advantage on the left. Push that advantage, get the Fury, get the kills, and a tier 1 tower after is a much more worthwhile trade for the Valks.
Valk's in a good spot here. You got a pretty decent gold lead on you. XP could be a little bit wider, but certainly aren't complaining if you're the Valkyries. Up a couple of levels, especially in that duo lane. A grand total of 3 levels, and that's exactly where you want to put them. Get Wowy to the late game. Crimson's always going to pop off on the mid lane. You get Ishtar running, and you're in a pretty good spot if you're the Valkyries. Now, neutral objectives down. Beacon went down to the Valkyries as well. Fire Giant, probably a glimmer in the eye at this point. Where should the Valks focus their attention to crack this thing open?
Keep pushing towards objectives. Once they're back up, keep your focus attention over towards there. The beacon was already grabbed by the Valks as well, so there's really not a lot of neutral objectives to deal with. So instead, it's all about keeping up the pressure, keeping Renjaru pushed all the way back towards tier 2, forcing him to back to base on a single minion wave and forcing him to lose out on some of those minions. You can see that Wowy's going to keep the minions all the way back. Sure, they're just going for a shield buff at this point, but that's more neutral farm. You're denying to Renjaru more of that gold that's not going to the pockets of the Sages. By continuing to try and bleed out the Sages in these ones, last hitting minions, Wowy's not even caring. He's fully stacked. He doesn't need last hits anymore. He's letting the waves clear themselves out so Renjaru misses out on the most gold possible. I don't even think Renjaru realizes that Gamma's on the other side of this wall. He's staring into the jungle while Gamma's looking at him through the wall at this point.
Gamma's wrapped all the way around, but Renjaru is playing super far back, knowing that one more spell could turn the tide here. Little Rising Jaguar away. Gamma not willing to follow that one up. Heads back toward the Hunter in Wowy. Meanwhile, in middle lane, it's Crimson and Sam combining. Looking for a bit of neutral farm here. Privative's got the bubble back online. So for the moment, not going to be subject to a Fear No Evil out of Sam. Going to need to pop that bubble first to kick things off. A pullback in from Gamma, but damage ripping through Privative. Courtesy of Wowy, forcing the home sweet home out of Nayhoo as well. A couple of ultimates with that Terra ult being popped as well, used from the Athenian Sages just to run away.
The biggest downside of Maui, we've seen it a few times this weekend, is his, not necessarily inability, but his difficulty to really be able to pop a bubble like some other supports do. Because you have to expend your mobility in order to get the stun to break it through, the hook's not going to do so. You then somewhat rely on the rest of your team to be able to find that one. Crimson would have to use his dash to get the long range route to grab that one, or Gamma's got to dive in with it with his ultimate, that solar, or not his ultimate, with the solar swing to take that one away. Or I guess if you really want, you can try and use the ultimate, but as long as Privative throws up a monolith or a wall, he just immunes it anyways at that point through. So because of how difficult it is to easily be able to pop that bubble away from Privative, it makes him a bit safer now. But it does kind of enforce the mentality of the Valkyries of just keep W King a bit harder.
Jangaru now locked down from Aquarius, forced to pop the beads, is now going to be a target for that Fear No Evil. Aquarius certainly calling that out to the rest of the Valks. Meanwhile, Pyromancer heads the way of the Valkyries. A couple of minutes ago, they also stole a tier 1 tower away from the Athenian Sages. The Valkyries are starting to open this one up a little bit, J-Mac. We got a 5-ish K lead, call it 4.5. Starting to tick over to level 20. Items coming online. Feeling pretty good if you're a Valks fan. You got a Oni Fury online as well. Certainly that'll be the next target here for the Order Squadron.
4 levels total in duo lane, 1 level for Sam in the jungle up for the Valkyries. 20s though, at least in solo and mid, and that's where some of the mitigation comes through for the Athenian Sages to try and stay alive during this one here. Nayhoo's actually gone for a double stacking style of build. The Charon's coin is eating up most of the prophetic potential stack, so he hasn't been able to get nearly as much on there. Once both of those are fully stacked up, he's going to be very tanky. He's going to be able to deal a lot of extra damage to some of these frontliners. So because of that, the Sages are still waiting for that time bomb to sort of hit, that 25 minutes. Once those 2 items are up, Nayhoo's going to hit so much harder in these fights. It's going to be a lot more difficult to really try and deal with this Baba Yaga. But at the same time, the Sages don't want to just keep giving up objectives for free. You don't want to keep giving up things like Oni Fury. Sure, at this level of the game, when nothing's really going on, those Oni minions aren't going to mean a whole lot. But that's gold that you're losing on the map. That's pressure that you're losing out on, especially with things also like Pyromancer that's being taken away. The Indian Sages have got to draw the line in the sand somewhere. Is Fire Giant the one place that you do so? Probably not. But it is going to make these Titan pushes so much more valuable now for at least the Valhalla Valkyries, because as long as they know where that Titan is going, they can try and force a fight somewhere else and give themselves an advantage.
Now, J-Mac, Jangaru on this Kali, 0-1-0, has been pretty much non-existent so far. And we're at, 24 minutes. We're at that 25-minute mark we were talking about. At what point is Kali going to have to, like you said, draw a line in the sand, put her foot down, and say, I'm going to run this game?
Right,
hold
here's
on,
a
just
great
a
opportunity to do
moment.
so.
Zanforsoccer using that Fear No Evil to try to create a little bit of distance, not able to do so, and Jangaru, making me eat my words, picks up a kill. Jungler on jungler violence there. Sam's going to be down for 45 seconds. Aquarius trying to defend a tier 2 tower. Not going to be able to do so as the rest of the Valhalla Valkyries get caught in the right lane, have to back to base.
Well, also goes to show that Snaddy is that much of a threat on the right side of the map, because there were 4 members of the Valkyries pushing up the right tier 2 tower. Snaddy shows up and says, nope, this is my tower. You are not taking this. This is where I stand. And the Valkyries gave up their push. Instead, they all had to back away and try and either bail out Sam or stop the potential next push. Because of that, Athenian Sages able to win out on not just a single pick for themselves, but 2 towers. And for a moment, we're trying to go for their first beacon, but just enough respawn time for the Valkyries, and regathering around, they're able to get all 3 stacks of the beacon. So what that means for them, 3% movement speed. Now, that doesn't sound like a big number on paper. You say, oh, 3%, that means what? They're moving like 10 units faster than everybody else, but that all starts to stack up. It starts to mean a little bit more once you're trying to chase somebody out, once you're trying to get away from somebody or either close that gap. The most important part is now the 15% extra damage to structures and the Unleashed Titans. The Titan portion, that's not as important. Yeah. It's those structures that were at once so difficult to take down, now that much easier, and then when you amplify it with things like a Fire Giant, makes sieging so much easier for the Valkyries.
And that's when we start seeing towers and phoenixes literally disappear underneath auto attacks, especially out of Wowy, who's got that dominance online, plenty of attack speed, going to be absolutely punching through with those auto attacks. Titans have been unleashed. They're going to be marching down this left-hand lane. And now, J-Mac, we get to figure out how the Valkyries want to play it. Do they want to allow these Titans to go to waste? Just kind of trade Titan for Titan, or are they going to allow these Titans to push down the lane and push with it?
I think the best call for the Valkyries would have been leave Wowy on the left side, push the Titan by himself, at least kill the enemy Titan by himself. But then the Athenian Sages, they recognize that, so they go straight to the Pyromancer. Fire could have been a call with Wowy rotating in. A 5v5 fight likely to break out completely away from the Titans. Looks like the Titans are just going to have their own duel on the left side.
Slapbox over on the left-hand side while the rest of the squad fight over that Pyromancer. That does end up going the way of the Athenian Sages. Meanwhile, Jangaru on the right-hand side's got a giant wave pushing down. Might be looking at a tier 2 tower while the rest of the Valhalla Valkyries have their attention focused elsewhere. Jangaru gonna look at this tier 2, but here comes Aquarius to stop the push from the Kali. Sam helping out that Order Titan take down the enemy in the Chaos Titan. Privative and Snaddy have made the rotation, though. Zanforsoccer did fall in the middle lane to plenty of damage coming out from Snaddy. Privative making sure that Sam has to run straight away, but meanwhile, with 2 members, and now 3 of the Athenian Sages on the left-hand side, the Valhalla Valkyries have kicked off a Fire Giant. Nayhoo, home sweet home for the CC immunity, throwing out some firebolts there. Aquarius driving the mid laner back. Here comes Snaddy, locked down on Aquarius, forced to use the ultimate for CC immunity. Jangaru ripping through. The chainsaw has been revved up for this Kali. Fire Giant not dropped by the Sages. Half HP courtesy of the Valhalla Valkyries. And the Sages continuing on the Fire Giant. Gamma moving forward. Crimson, low Crimson with the ultimate, dropping it. Are the Sages for just a moment here. Fear No Evil separating this fight straight in half. Gamma taking down Privative. Crimson taking down Snaddy. Renjaru turns it right back around on the enemy ADC. Jangaru is here. Nayhoo puts the finishing touches on Sam, and only Crimson walks away from that slaughter.
Valkyries make a great call. They say, okay, we sent a few members over to left side from the Athenian Sages. We could start a Fire Giant. The problem is they spent so long in the pit doing so little damage to it that once Snaddy teleports back in, again, the teleport coming into conversation for Snaddy, he's able to walk through. Sure, they lose a tier 2 tower, not the end of the world when you can get Fire Giant kept away from the Valkyries in that case. And then the biggest thing there was the constant interruption of ErupTCrimson's damage. We saw 2, maybe 3 times in that fight where Crimson's charging ultimate. He's getting ready to say, okay, no, it's too early. I can't steal Fire Giant with this. Okay, I'm going to charge again because 3 are coming at me. No, I need to stop because now one of them's in my face. Okay, now I'm going to charge. Nope, I've got to dash away at this point. Crimson was never able to get that ultimate through until the very end of the fight. And by that point, it's too little too late. The Athenian Sages have now officially brought themselves right back into this game and now have a lead.
And we saw the chainsaw revved up there, absolutely ripping through. Jangaru with the Destruction Ultimate can pretty much do anything he wants at this stage of the game. It's just Crimson and Aquarius here. Crimson might be in a tough spot here. Privative falling to half HP, but same thing goes for the Fire Giant. The Athenian Sages are going to leash the neutral objective. Gamma picks it right back up. He's not willing to let all of that damage go to waste. Sam and Aquarius around this left-hand side. Jangaru is right by Sam, though. It's jungle v jungle. Privative half HP. There comes the Terra ultimate. ErupTCrimson with some big shots ripping through the Terra. It's Snaddy caught all alone. Fire Giant at a quarter HP. Finally now reset. Sam throwing some shots into Snaddy. Fire Giant healing back up to full HP. And it's going to be a reset, as caution is the name of the game here at 29, almost 30 minutes.
The Valkyries want to try and go for that. They have to send Privative back to base. They do a lot of damage, and most supports in your games would probably go back. So I'm a quarter HP. I can't stick around, but Privative waits because he's got Snaddy standing by him. Because of all that extra healing that comes from Snaddy, from Privative being out of combat at that point, they're able to drop Monolith, get those heals off from Snaddy as well, get Priv back to about half HP, and that gives him and the Sages the confidence to just walk forward. And that's the big name of the game right now, is just the confidence of the Sages to walk into these fights. Whether they are at a disadvantage or at an advantage, the Sages are just W-king back out, keeping Crimson out of these fights. All the range in the world is not going to do Crimson much if he doesn't get an opportunity to use those abilities.
The range has been paying dividends for the slash mark, though. No deaths yet for Crimson, so at least
great weekend for him.
No waiting around in the grayscale. Pyromancer, half HP. Maybe willing to coin flip are the Valhalla Valkyries with a great confirm here in the Crimson Ultimate. Privative moving forward. Nayhoo's here as well, though. Baba Yaga can do the damage with that home sweet home, with the potions throwing out as well. Jangaru on that left-hand side, keep an eye on the Kali. If Kali gets on Crimson, if Kali gets on Wowy, if Kali gets on Sam, could be game over for the backline.
Priv and Snaddy sustaining themselves up. Jangaru pushing a wave over in mid. Could just give this up entirely. He could. If he wants to, just start forcing objectives over on the left-hand side, steal buff camps away, steal this chest camp out, go for a Fury. And that's putting that little bug in the back of the Valhalla Valkyries' mind saying, where's Jangaru? What's this Kali doing? I haven't seen Jangaru since he cleared the wave. He went left. Is he at the Fury? Is he wrapping around? Did he go back to base? Because of that unknowing communication that's going on in the Valkyries' booth right now, because they don't know where the Kali is, and because they already see how much of a threat he was pre-full slot in his build, before he had a full 6 items through, you always have to keep your mind open as to where this Kali is and what Jangaru is doing, knowing that the Valhalla Valkyries are forced to back away from the Fire Giant. They don't want to commit there. But again, the Valkyries don't need to be the ones to pull the Fire Giant. They don't need to even be the ones to do 90% of the damage to the Fire Giant. All they need is that 1 to 1.5k threshold where ErupTCrimson from the furthest range possible can steal that one or secure that one away for themselves. That's all the Valkyries need around fire. They just need that opportunity to snipe the Sages with that ult. You hit one target on the Sages with the ultimate, you've essentially won that team fight. If Crimson can find 2, might as well be GG's on the fight.
In this Fire Giant dance, we've also seen Maui with some great landfalls to cut off the escape. Jangaru running forward, ripping through Aquarius, forced to use the ultimate. Defensively there, San for Soccer caught between a rock and a hard place. CC a tip there from Wowy to save the jungler, but it is for naught as Sam's going to be dead for the next 60 seconds. The Athenian Sages having to drop back, having to heal up, but it's going to be a 4v5 for the next foreseeable couple seconds here.
Crimson did hit both Snaddy and Renjaru. Unfortunately for him, Snaddy was the one clipped, and he's got teleport, so he's right back in the fight. Renjaru, though, very unhealthy for this fight. Even trying to sustain off fire is not the easiest call. Crimson's got a decent bit of CDR into his build, 30% afforded to him from his first 2 items, that being the starter and that Spear of Desolation, so his ult will come back up very soon. Just enough in time to keep that threat up for the Sages, and that's the most important part, is keeping up pressure around here, not giving the Sages a chance to try and push, and not allowing Jangaru to do exactly what he did last fight, which is he dove into the backline. He jumped in the middle of 3, stunned, pulled beads off of Crimson, and just casually walked out of the fight with no threat to him. Jangaru has got to be the one that gets answered by the Valkyries. You need that final judgment to hit Jangaru, whether that's to get destruction out of him or to take him down before destruction has an opportunity to go off.
And here's where we're seeing all of that healing out of the Sages come in handy. Aquarius drops down to half HP, a landfall just for Peel. Aquarius is going to drop down to Nayhoo. Snaddy and Privative are done. Final judgment only hits the tank of the Athenian Sages. Jangaru with half HP healing up. Sam for Soccer Big play coming out of the Hun bots to really help out the Valkyries in their time of need. It's going to be a 4v5 for 50 seconds as Aquarius is on the back foot. Fire Giant started up here. But low on ultimates are the Athenian Sages. You got lights out from the Xbalanque, and you got the destruction from Jangaru. But no secure from the Sages, so not willing to start up that objective quite yet.
Crimson not hitting an ideal target in the fight. Only Aquarius dies, and by the time he respawns, it will have teleport to rejoin immediately. So the Sages have a 24-second window to what they want to do with it. Fire Giant is the best call that they can go for, but they've got to keep eyes on Crimson. That ult is coming back up soon.
No big bang yet for the Thoth, though. Not quite. No final judgment online. Privative moving forward. No CC. Wowy sending out some auto attacks just to see how much damage he can do. Nayhoo up into that home sweet home. Could be onto the Fire Giant. Sam for Soccer getting chunked out as well. Meanwhile, in the back line, the Athenian Sages take down the Fire Giant. Crimson using the ultimate just a moment too late. Sam does trade out Snaddy. In return, Gamma's charging forward, looking for the hook here onto Privative. Big time damage from Sam, who holds the monkey. Overhand smash. Privative unleashing Earth's Fury. Jangaru finds Sam for Soccer in the meantime. Gamma's not willing to give this one up. Looping around. Here comes Aquarius back from the dead. Crimson takes out Privative. Renjaru falling low. Aquarius charging forward. Landfall. There's the execute. Aquarius finds one. Nayhoo is the next target. Shots coming out. Lockdown into Nayhoo, but Jangaru is healed up.
Could have been, but there is still that tier 2 tower. Meanwhile, Jangaru and
gracious.
they're still doing a lot of damage in that fight. Perfect timing, at least for the Athenian Sages to go, though they were just about a quarter second from having that Fire Giant stolen by ErupTCrimson. Kept him out of the fight just long enough to secure that one through and make sure they get fire, but at what cost? They lost 3 of their teammates in that one, and the Valhalla Valkyries can keep themselves alive even despite the small deficit to themselves. But now that we've hit that 35-minute mark, we're in the late game. Gold doesn't mean nearly as much anymore. All we're going to start seeing are these power potions picked up by the carries. Even the front line is going to grab some because, well, they've already got all the defenses that they need at this point. Making sure to still keep focus on Jangaru for the Valks. That's the important part, is where's this Kali? Because Jangaru didn't use ult in that fight at all. That entire double Fire Giant fight, even triple Fire Giant fight we witnessed, Jangaru is yet to use that ultimate. Because the Valks aren't forcing that, there's not enough threat to Jangaru, and he might, I'm not saying he will, he's a professional player here, might get a little laxative. Will say, okay, well, I haven't needed to use the ultimate, so I'm not going to have to worry about it now. As long as those beats are down, that's their biggest threat. If they can CC him before beats are up, easy kill. ErupTCrimson, full charge ult, fear no evil, boom, Jangaru's gone. Once those beats are up, Jangaru is again the biggest threat on map.
You know, J-Mac, if I'm the Sages and I take the Fire Giant and my team theoretically has to get wiped, like I don't have a choice, I think the 2 people I want that FG on is Jangaru and Nayhoo on the Baba Yaga, right? Like maybe Renjaru too. Yeah, absolutely. But theoretically, if 3 people have to die, I love the fact that my Kali and my Baba Yaga still have that bonus damage on board. The Athenian Sages take down a tier 2 tower in the left-hand side, shove in a minion wave under this left lane Phoenix. 36 minutes, J-Mac, every single game in this set has gone the distance. We've made it to a game number 3 here in this elimination round. And the Valhalla Valkyries, the Athenian Sages, fighting to hang on at SMITE Masters.
Looking at the lowest right-hand side of the relics is the most important ones right now for the Sages. 30 seconds till Renjaru gets his relics back online. That's when the real fight of the Sages wants to kick off, or maybe it's just right now.
Cutting the lights, Xbalanque ultimate popped Gamma in. Gamma falling low. Home sweet home used preemptively to get under the bird. Sam for Soccer wraps around immediately. Jumps back out, isn't able to hang around. Crimson charging it up. Woo! Takes a shot there from Baba. Oh, just ripping through that Fire Giant damage combined with a 37-minute Baba Yaga. Ain't no joke. Wowy using the ultimate. 2-man landfall. Yanks in Nayhoo. Where's the fear no evil? Doesn't matter. Crimson rips through with the final judgment. Mid laner falls. Jangaru is low as well. Crimson picks up a second. 6-0 and 3. This man can't be stopped. Jangaru with the chainsaw. How many can go down before Kali dies? 1. Execute threshold. Aquarius don't even need it, baby. Jangaru falls and only Snaddy up alive for the next 45 seconds.
Nayhoo going to be coming back up with Renjaru, but that one all starts with just an awkward initiation from Nayhoo trying to get into that fight, drops the ultimate offensively to try and push back the Valkyries, and sure, you pushed ErupTCrimson back, you got the kill on the Thoth, but the fact is you've now put Renjaru in an awkward spot because he doesn't have relics during that. Nayhoo's walked so far forward that all it takes is a nice little landfall in from Gamma to pull 2 people back. Snaddy should go down, but he's just trying to buy time. This tier 2 has taken forever for the Valkyries to take down. They might, at best, get a Phoenix beyond here. Snaddy's bought so much time for them that there might even be enough for a defense. Look how long it's taking them to take these structures out, and that's with their carry. It's only until the minions show up that this goes down swiftly. Now Nayhoo and Renjaru are back. The Valkyries do the best that they can given their circumstance, and I want to say props to Snaddy for holding out as long as he did in there to keep the Valkyries busy, to force Sam away, to make this push last a little bit longer through, and allows time for his team to respawn.
Primal Fury on the map. Fire Giant going to come back sooner rather than later. Got a middle lane bird down if you're the Athenian Sages, but still plenty of playmaking potential here. You didn't love to see that out of Jangaru, right? You love to see a reset. You love to see you find the target, you find another kill, you pick up a triple, you pick up a quadra, you win the game. I mean, that's kind of the ideal situation if you're the Kali. Only finds one, though. This next team fight, it's really got to go the way of Jangaru's. Fire Giant back on the map here. About 15 seconds away from the 40-minute mark. All three of these games have really taken their time to get here, and boy, oh boy, this is some clean smite. This is some excellent clashing from both of these squads. Pyromancer going to be dropped down swiftly here from the Valhalla Valkyries with all the damage on the board, and it's Aquarius playing Spacemaker.
Sages have time, though. Wait for the Fire Giant. It's back on map. The Valkyries, again, they don't need to be the one to force this one. All they need is to secure. They need the last 5% of the Fire Giant's health is all the work that they need to do around the pit. The Sages can sit around and wait. They've got some time. Mid lane, sure, you have fire minions in, but Jangaru hasn't been with his team for hardly any of these Fire Giant pushes. He's always been in mid, dealing with the minions, then repositioning himself, always keeping his mind on where the Valkyries are and forcing the Valkyries to keep thought of where's this Kali? Are they in my backline? Are they sitting in my red buff right now? Forcing a lot of these extra wards to go through. So the Sages have time to buy until this mid Phoenix comes back up. The Valkyries also have time because they don't need to full pull this one if they need, because they have the secure. All they need is that last little bit of damage and somebody to step out of line.
It's Jangaru being held off by Aquarius in the middle lane. Gamma charging forward, dropping in the FG. Meanwhile, Aquarius getting chunked down here by Jangaru, who's taking a lot of damage in return from this Achilles. Snaddy also forced out as well. So much space creation on the side of the Valhalla Valkyries. I mean, if you get caught in a Fear No Evil, it's lights out for the Athenian Sages. Crimson is frontlining. Question mark takes a big shot. Potion to the face there out of Nayhoo, and it's going to be a backup from the Valks.
Aquarius is probably the worst, if not the second worst person for Jangaru to try and fight, specifically because of one item, and that's that Midgardian mail picked up. Not only is it the attack speed slow, but it's the movement speed slow. It makes it harder for Jangaru to stick to that target, slows down its attack speed. I say second, maybe first worst, because Gamma's the other one, who also has a way to reduce that attack speed, whether that be from the Horrific or from that Bewitched Dagger that was picked up earlier. So tanks are not ideal for Jangaru. He wants to find either Sam caught out of position, he wants to try and find Crimson or Wowy, but both of them have realized, I don't want to be near the Kali. I'm going to stay right here at the Fire Giant pit, and is now forcing the hand of the jungle of the Athenian Sages to try and maybe potentially make a mistake for the Valkyries to capitalize on.
Bubble shredded off of Snaddy there. Privative still has a bit of CC immunity. Same thing goes for Jangaru, 1v1ing Aquarius in the middle lane. So Sam, no real great way to initiate with that Fear No Evil. Going to be relying on Gamma to kick things off with a landfall. Maybe Crimson sending some poke damage through. Opening the door here, Nayhoo hovering in the back line. Same thing goes for Snaddy. Meanwhile, Aquarius forced to use the ultimate. Not even forced to use the ultimate there. Bit of a head scratcher there, J-Mac. That's going to be down for Aquarius for a little bit.
He's got some CDR to bring it back. It's just questionable why he would use Execute when he's under no real threat of a, third mana Kali, even both of them sitting at full HP. I guess just trying to clear the wave as fast as he can to rejoin with the team, but all of that window of opportunity that the Valhalla Valkyries had to try and get that pressure, keep Jangaru away from these team fights, has now been lost. This final fire wave is the last one that needs to be dealt with. I don't know. It's questionable as to why Aquarius used the ult. As you say, could have been just a misclick there. Maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but now the Athenian Sages, once they clear this wave out, once they deal with Jangaru here, or at least once Jangaru can deal with those minions, it'll be a full 5v5 around fire.
You would love to take out this Kali before the Fire Giant dance even begins, but with Destruction online, it just is not 9 out of 10
so
times
hard.
that Kali is going to survive the initial dive before you can take her out. The Valhalla Valkyries not willing to start up this FG yet. I mean, it does a ton of damage at 43 minutes, and tanking the Athenian Sages while you're also fighting the Fire Giant could be the difference maker here. Gamma going in aggressively, loses that CC bubble. And this is just, I mean, it's gonna be calm here, JMac. It's gonna be looking, it's gonna be calculated, and then all hell is going to break loose in one single moment. It's just a question of what ability, what player, what god is going to step forward and make it happen.
Well, it should have been right there, but something poked out Sam. Must have gotten hit by a straight potion from Nayhoo at that point to put him down 40% of his HP, and now Jangaru gets the luxury of split pushing, keeps Sam there. That would have been the perfect time for the Valkyries to go in. I mean, Jangaru was so far away from his team. He's pushing in tier 1 tower of enemy territory in mid, while everybody else is up at the opposite corner of blue buff at that point. Would have loved to have seen the Valkyries start something out, blink Fear No Evil from Sam, get a couple of beads away, reset, start that fight again, but all that push by Jangaru, whatever end up hitting Sam for soccer, buys the Sages an extra little bit of time, buys them some room over for Fire Giant. So we push into the depths once again. It's a 50-minute game 1, a 42-minute game number 2, and now we're hitting that 45-minute threshold here in game number 3. Elimination on the line for both of these teams out here. One going home, one still having to fight against the Niflheim Wargs, and the balance of this game on a knife's edge right now.
Sam for soccer, locked down. And you bring up a great point, J-Mac. Is it not worth maybe burning a Fear No Evil just to maybe shred some beads or get some relics off the table before actually initiating 60 seconds later?
Try. Who just dropped a runic bomb on the floor?
Don't worry about it.
I'm worried about it.
Don't worry about it.
Mostly because that's some extra secure potential around Fire Giant. If you're the Sages, you need that little bit of boon. Don't necessarily need it for the Sieges, but now Snaddy could get caught out.
Caught between a rock and a hard place here. Up into the cavalry charge. Isn't able to stun anyone out or do any real damage, just using it for escape. And the Valhalla Valkyries have caught a little bit of a break here, moving forward with a minion wave as well. Could be an opportunity for this tier 2 tower to fall. Crimson sending through shots. Jangaru in the middle lane against Aquarius. No stun. Connecting. Here comes the Terra ultimate. Lights go out for the Valhalla Valkyries, who back off. No communication means no team fight for the Valhalla Valkyries. Couple of ultimates burned just to create space. Aquarius once again using the ultimate against the Kali in the middle lane. And once again, it's back off. It's heal. Utilize this Snaddy healing. Utilize the monolith. Just top it off. Get right back to fighting shape. Here comes
Sam.
Fear No Evil. Privative is going to fall. It's a question of who has the final shot. Privative walks out. It's Aquarius that trades it back out. Gamma on the back foot at half HP. Privative escapes JMac with 200 HP, and it's Aquarius in the grayscale for the next 60 seconds.
You have the best range in the game, barring Janus and a mage to try and kill them, and yet Privative still walks away with 5% HP, even nearly body blocked by Sam to go through there. Just one more basic would have done it. One hieroglyphic shot, but instead the Valkyries lose out on their solo laner instead, who pushed up even further to try and secure that kill under the tier 2 tower, and now open the door for the Sages to go for Fire Giant. A massive fumble by the Valkyries at the top side of the map have now cost them EFG. I don't know if that's necessarily in-game though. Still 30 seconds for Aquarius, but still all 3 Phoenixes up. Tower on the right side of the map. If the Sages can find one more pick before, that could have been GG, but for now, banking on having EFG on all 5.
JMac, you called it the best, a knife's edge, the precipice. This game was teetering and tottering, and it was a matter of 100 HP, 200 HP that has flipped this game in favor of the Athenian Sages, who cut the lights on the Valhalla Valkyries, who charge forward underneath this middle lane. Phoenix Nayhoo throwing out the firebolts, dishing out the damage. Gamma with a landfall. Gamma catches none. No follow-up here from the Valhalla Valkyries. The Athenian Sages, for the moment, turned away from this middle lane bird.
There's an empty net there on the cast out from Gamma. Doesn't even get any beads, doesn't get a bubble or anything like that, but did buy some time for the Valkyries. Gets Aqua back on the map, gets him reset, forces the Athenian Sages to now separate once again. Jangaru going to split push on left, and again, the best person to send over there to defend against him is Aquarius. Has the ability to slow down that auto attack, always has that threat as well. As long as that Sunder is online for Aquarius, has a way to deal with Jangaru, keep him back, and keep the Sages split up. They've got plenty of time still on this Fire Giant, no need to rush. Wait for the next wave, wait for Renjaru's ultimate comeback. You have an easy way to poke out this Phoenix from such a long range. I'm surprised that's not what they were using the ultimate for last time. Privative, bit of an awkward dash dance there to try and deal with Crimson, but setting up for the Sages to move forward once more.
Unfortunate, Crimson couldn't grab a bubble with that stun. Jangaru and Aquarius. It's deja vu in the left-hand lane as the solo takes on the jungler there. Sam hanging around, just waiting, an opportunity for a Fear No Evil. Nayhoo takes a shot to the face there from ErupTCrimson over the wall, and that's exactly what this Thoth brings to the table on this defense, able to poke through walls, over walls, safely, most importantly. This defense is going to rest essentially on Crimson's shoulders, rather, as Wowy gets locked down, and here comes Xbalanque ultimate. Wowy caught between a rock and a hard place. Snaddy on ErupTCrimson, who doesn't find a priority target with the final judgment. Sam takes out Snaddy to kick things off. Renjaru now dealing damage to Gamma, now going to die to Wowy. Sam onto Privative, blinks in with the monkey. Aqua has created space. Crimson takes down the Terra. The Athenian Sages lose 3 of their members for a mid lane burn, and now the Valhalla Valkyries, they charge it down the middle lane. This could be an opportunity to open up the middle lane Phoenix for the Athenian Sages and crack the base.
I think at this point you might just have to go in. I mean, it's no ultimate for Nayhoo for at least another 30 seconds. Jangaru doesn't have his for over that. But the Valhalla Valkyries have got to make a decision now. You have to full commit to the offense, or you don't commit at all. Either get a bird and get out, or go for the fight. You have 35 seconds until Snaddy is back up, and Nayhoo's ultimate closing in. This is the decision-making now for the Valkyries. Do they go in? Do they back away? It seems the call is for the Titan.
This is it, the Valhalla Valkyries. It is a 2v5. Only Jangaru and only Nayhoo here to defend their Titan, to keep them here at SMITE Masters. It's home sweet home. It's dishing the damage. The Valhalla Valkyries forced out on the back of the Baba Yaga. Jangaru hasn't even touched the Valhalla Valkyries yet. Now the Valkyries, they are back in the fray. Jangaru taking out Wowy. Nayhoo finds Sam for ErupTCrimson erases the Kali. Snaddy is back in the mix, hopping on the horse, shutting it down. Aquarius, Gamma force off of the Titan as well. And Jangaru and Nayhoo have bought enough time for Snaddy, for Renjaru, for the Sages to respawn and defend their chances to move on here in SMITE Masters.
The Valkyries looking cross-eyed as they walk into the Titan. They say, oh, we got Nayhoo over here and Jangaru over here, not paying attention to the big objective in front of them. Should they have full committed inside the Titan? Probably so. Just dive on top of Nayhoo. You have the damage. You have Crimson. You see how much damage his ultimate does. You just clip the Baba Yaga at that point. You clip Jangaru, you take them out of the fight, you force them back, but instead, Nayhoo keeps Wowy busy out of the fight. Jangaru buys enough space on the left-hand side. He jumps past everybody, says, I don't need my ultimate. I just need to find Wowy. I just need to find anybody who's by themselves low HP. Does end up dying, but it buys enough time between him and Snaddy, or between him and Nayhoo, to get Snaddy back on respawn, and instead, it's just the mid lane Phoenix. This is what I was saying for the Valkyries. You either have to full commit to the Titan push, end this game now with the 35-second window you have, or instead, start stripping away these Phoenixes. You are so far in the game. We are 52 minutes in the game. You have elixirs in pocket. You can take every single Phoenix off the map. You take away that measly tier 2 tower on the right side, all 3 Phoenixes, back away. You might not be able to get all in that 30-second window, but at least getting a couple of them. Getting that left side would have been so vital for the Valhalla Valkyries to keep their push up for right, because now we're right back to where we were 10 minutes ago.
And the Fire Giant has respawned back onto the map. This time the Athenian Sages have control of that Fire Giant pit. And you're so right, J-Mac. It's just going to be a repeat.
It's just a record player.
It's going to be Aquarius.
It's a literal broken record right now.
It's going to be Aquarius and Jangaru in the middle lane. I mean, are you sure we're not watching footage from the 47-minute mark here, J-Mac, as it is a complete repeat of the Fire Giant dance from 10 minutes ago? The Athenian Sages control the pit. Jangaru and Aquarius in the middle lane. And once again, it's going to be Gamma. It's going to be a landfall. It's going to be Sam for Soccer coming in with a Fear No Evil. It's going to be... What is it going to be, J-Mac?
It's literally going to be what we saw earlier. A single pick. A single pick. We're 53 minutes in. Respawn timers are 75, closing in on 80-plus seconds at this point. One pick is what you need to get Fire Giant. After that, it's then going to the structures, to the left bird, to the right bird, to the tier 2 tower that's somehow still standing on both teams' side of the map, despite how deep into the depths of this game that we are. getting bubble away from Privative.
big.
That's massive. 70 seconds without CC immunity. Does still have knockup immunity so long as he has his passive, and this could be a great opportunity for the Valkyries to get back in.
Oh, Sam with the using the cooldown reduction on the beads to get the monkey back online.
Huge.
The overhand smash takes out Snaddy, who's going to be in the grayscale
Walk in,
for
end the game.
80 seconds. It is a
Gotta stop
4v5
Batz.
for the next minute plus. Sam for soccer, middle lane, joined by Crimson, being joined by Wowy in just a moment here. No fear, no evil. Privative still alive. Aquarius stopping the back on Jangaru. That's going to be a massive target to keep off of this defense. The Valhalla Valkyries have to. They have to make use of this next 60 seconds. Renjaru using the ultimate just to escape Aquarius. Jangaru helping the ADC escape the might of the Achilles.
Are they too far up,
J-Mac,
though?
50
Oh
seconds
my
to play
God,
with
that
Renjaru
damage!
falling down
He
and
got him!
Crimson ripping through Renjaru. Final judgment, and Renjaru has come up short. Wowy takes out Privative. It's 3 down for the Athenian Sages. It's only Nayhoo and Jangaru. It's a broken record, J-Mac.
Push
It is
Phoenix.
the jungle. It is the mid.
Push
Here
Phoenix
to
to fire
defend
something.
for the Athenian Sages. The Valkyries grouped up as 5. Landfall available for Gamma. Make use of this time, J-Mac.
No ults. 15 seconds or less. Jangaru and Nayhoo do so much damage, or the Valkyries just need to commit to the Titan right now.
Gamma moves into the Titan room. Aquarius onto Jangaru. Nayhoo dishing out the
so
damage.
hard.
Wow, he's sending auto attacks into the Titan. It doesn't matter. J-Mac, the Athenian Sages did not prophesize this defeat. The Valhalla Valkyries spread their wings and move on to Smite Masters. Day number 3.
Bit of a slow phase to the Valkyries, but here in this tournament have finally ramped up and got things going, though. It took them a while to do so. The lack of full commitment is a little astonishing here from the Valkyries. The team as veteran as this, yes, you have that decision making. You say, okay, can we go for this fight? No, let's back away. I feel that in that previous fight where they tried to go for Titan, they could have gotten to more than just mid-bird. If you're not sure on your damage on Titan, when the enemy is standing by, the 2-man squad standing there, go for another Phoenix. Make your Fire Giant push that much easier. Put that much more threat on the Titan. But the most important thing there was stopping the backs as long as possible and keeping the enemy out of position, keeping the Athenian Sages locked down over in that right lane so Jangaru can't back. He doesn't have ultimate. He's got to take a long path in and then allow the team that pushed up mid to then encroach over to the right-hand side and be able to capitalize. Crimson only needed one ultimate. He found the one he needed that game.
Well, J-Mac, we were treated to some absolute bangers in a 3-game set between the Valkyries and the Sages. The Valkyries come out on top. AJ Gore, break that one down for us.
Well, 50 minutes, 40 minutes, then 55 full minutes there in Game 3. Long time to be playing Smite here, but it is the Valkyries that get to stand on top. And you could see it at the end there, right, in the player cams. A lot of energy, a lot of excitement over the win. A lot of Sages that go well and not well for both teams. A lot of defenses that go well for both teams. It really does. And again, we talked about this earlier, actually. I think for Game 1, you get to a certain length of game. I couldn't tell you what happened for First Blood that game. I remember some action in the duo lane, but I don't think that's where it happened. But I can tell you that the beads at the very end to get some cooldown off of a timer, specifically to teleport in, little moments like that, AJ, that's what feels like the big difference maker.
Yeah, and there was a replay of First Blood. Took 10 minutes for the First Blood to come in. 10.
That was 45 minutes ago.
I was about to say, almost 3/4 of an hour ago, First Blood came in, and it came on the start of a landfall from Gamma, and Sam for Soccer going in aggressively as well. But as the game went on, there was one person that grew and grew and grew into that game, and that's the man on your screen right now, Aquarius.
Yeah.
At the very end, he was untouchable by anybody on the Athenian Sages. They had zero answer for this Achilles.
Yeah, it feels like there were a lot of moments where if Jangaru is able to just get something done in mid, there was a split push. There's a split push in left. But every single time that he got any sort of presence forward, Aquarius would just kind of saunter up and be like, all right, man, are we doing this now or not? And every single time, you could see the Kali icon immediately start going back north. It did not want to be in that fight. And unfortunately, much like J-Mac highlighted towards the very end, sometimes all you have to do is stop the backs and hold on the best that you can. And unfortunately for the Sages, that's exactly what happens. You get really good presence. I think you have to give a shout out over to Crimson, 46,000 damage. Only actually 200 more than his solo laner was able to put out. but it is the slash line that comes along with that damage that makes a huge difference. I mean, tons of times we saw those Thoth snipes just hit.
Oh yeah, and then I think at the very end in that team fight, they managed to catch the Xbalanque as he's dashing away from danger. Beautiful hit on that ult from Crimson, wins his team the game at the very end. And it's just the constant threat from that Thoth ult that kept the Athenian Sages at bay, just kept them on their toes, kept them from really pulling the fire objectives, keeping them from pulling on any sieges. And that's the power of the Thoth. You don't have to really do anything. You just have to exist and be that threat.
Well, there are 5 players that are making insane plays for, I think, both sides in that game. But towards the end, it is only one team that stands on top, and you could choose pretty much any of them. But, of course, we choose the carry who looks good throughout all of that. We've got Wowy standing by now for an interview.
Wowy, first of all, man, congratulations. That was a hell of a 3-game set. The flannel took it home this time. Game 1 was 40-some minutes. Game 2 was 50-plus minutes. Going into Game 3, are you guys just exhausted? I mean, how are your mentals going into the final game of that set?
I mean, our mentals were good for most of it. I know that we could win. I think they had just a super Ares counterpick the second game. They had a super Ares counterpick the second game, so I knew third game we'd be fine. Yeah, my brain's pretty shot, and so was everyone there. We're all just sighing, and it was just such a long day.
Your brain's shot. My voice is shot from casting that final in there. Speaking of some of those picks, the Erlang Shen in game number 2 didn't really go exactly to plan. Of course, Crimson gets his insane Janus banned out from all day long. When you guys picked up the Hun bots for Sam, you picked up the Thoth for Crimson. How confident were you about that composition going into game 3?
We actually had to kind of draft on the fly. They did a really good job with drafting the last 2 games. They super counterpicked the second one, and then the third one, they kind of took everything that we wanted. We wanted to try some other stuff, and then they kind of took it away from us. So, we were happy with the comp, but they did a really good job in drafting.
Well, you've made it on to the next phase of SMITE Masters. You guys going to take it easy tonight, or are you going to immediately start prepping for your next opponent?
I'm sleeping.
Wowy, Wowy from the Valkyries, headed to bed. You heard it here first. Take it on back, boys.
It is the right answer, right? At this point, look, when you finish your last game at 8:30, you've been here playing since 11, you go home and sleep. You got to wake up and do it all again tomorrow. But I think
I'm going home and sleeping as well.
I might grab dinner first, and then pass out. That sounds pretty good. That's honestly just a good order of operations in general. But right now for the Valkyries, what we are looking at is a still tough, but a brighter future than they came into today. They have been facing elimination. They have had their backs against the wall. But they take out the Weavers. They take out the Sages. And now they are one step away from trying to take out the Wargs and qualify themselves into the main bracket. So tomorrow, you're going to be watching the Valkyries take on the Wargs. Winner of that will play Hex Mambo, and that is then going to seed them for who they play in the main bracket. Now, because we want to make sure that we avoid having anyone play back-to-back, we want to make sure they have a set off, we're going to start off with that first elimination set, then we're going to jump over here to the main bracket. So tomorrow, you're actually going to get treated. We're going to have Kings and Dragons playing, I believe, second. Then we'll be jumping back over to Mambo versus the winner of the Valkyries and the Wargs, and then we'll close out the day with the Leviathans and the Ferrymen. So a lot of SMITE still to be played, and tomorrow the SBL teams start to get into the mix. Then on Sunday, Gladiators, Hounds, they'll have their matchups, and we'll get to see as well the Warriors and the Ravens for the first time in a month. Alpha Jackal, there's a lot to look forward to. Can you choose one that excites you the most?
Oh, one that excites me for tomorrow. I think it will be the Camelot Kings versus the Jade Dragons.
Yeah.
I think overall the Dragons will say they've had an underwhelming phase. I think they would have liked to have been first, maybe second seed going into this tournament, but instead find themselves down in what? 5th, maybe 4th seed. So they find themselves just one game away from qualifying for next week, sure, but they do have to go up against a strong Camelot Kings roster.
I'm really excited to watch, at this point, see what the Valkyries have to offer us in the morning, as well as, like you said, get some of these SBL teams into the mix, into the fray, and see what they have to offer us, especially on this new patch. But for now, we're going to close this one out. From myself, from Alpha Jackal, all of the other casters, everyone back in production, and everyone here at hi-rez Studios. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a long day, and I'm sure we're in for another one tomorrow, so we'll catch you tomorrow at 11 a.m.